Oh, there he is.
Yeah, he's up there.
I just.
Josh is there and Donna.
Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome, everybody, to the October 14th, 2024 regular City Council meeting. I'd like to ask our city clerk to please call the roll, understanding for those of you in the audience, we have two council members that are on Zoom. We have some travel going on. We also have some illnesses in the works. We have a couple of members of the staff also on Zoom. So with that, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Counselor Long? Present. Counselor McLaughlin?
Present.
Counselor Runyon?
Present.
Counselor Randall?
Present.
Counselor Richardson?
Present.
Mayor Mays?
Present. Item 3 is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask Counselor Rod Runyon to please lead us in the pledge.
Stand if you're able. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation
under God, indivisible, with
justice for
liberty
all.
and justice for all.
Okay, item 4 is approval of the agenda. Apparently, item 10A, which is the short-term rental issue, is not a public hearing. It will be considered under action items. So just so everybody, especially on the city council, understands that. So can we get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
I'll second it.
Moved by Counselor Long and seconded by Counselor Richardson to amend the agenda or to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Hey, McLaughlin, aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Item 5A, the Dalles Main Street is here. Cynthia Corchi, please come forward, introduce yourself. Oh, we also have the president with us. What's that?
No.
Low.
It's the red light.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Do you need my address? Okay. Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. I'm here along with Kristen, and just to talk a little bit about where Main Street is at and some updates since we last were here, which I'm not even sure when that was. But we thought we'd go ahead and give you just a little bit of information, and then if you have any questions about what's been going on at the Dalles Main Street. So if you go ahead and start the presentation, that'd be great. To kind of with the pandemic, with everything else that happened within the community, there was kind of a pause and a lot of difficulty for the downtown merchants, as well as the Dalles Main Street. So this past year, the board has really made some significant strides and restructuring the entire program, adding a lot of new board members and new committee members, and then hiring an administrative consultant to implement the strategic plan. And so this evening, I'm going to give you some more updates about what that current projects look like and our vision for the future. So just to refresh everybody's memory about what TD Main Street is, our mission is engaging the community members and partners in creating a vibrant downtown that illuminates our historic and cultural assets and enhances the district's economic vitality. So we, strive all the things that we're doing in the 4 pillars of Main Street, the national program, are really attributed to both the vision and mission of TD Main Street. So the 4 pillars are promotion, design, economic vitality, and organization. So just to give you a little bit of insight on what the priorities have been for 2024, our priority for promotion was to create downtown brand identity, utilize strategic events to build community and expand our customer base. So we're doing that through First Friday events, our Uncorked Wine Walk and Mural Fest event that I'll talk a little bit more about that we just had, downtown trick or treating, photos with Santa, holiday sip and shop, seasonal lighting, that sort of thing. A lot of time, the promotion is probably the most visible thing of the 4 pillars. We've been communicating with our merchants and determining, what events are most effective, what are things that we need to adjust and to change, what are their needs, what would they like to see, what changes can we make, what can we do to support them the best. So on October 5th, we hosted our inaugural wine walk, and it was a huge success. We had 8 different participating local wineries participating, and they teamed up with 8 different host businesses. And then we had a bonus business at the Dalles Art Center. They joined us as well. So we ended up with 9, and we had 75 participants take part with the day, which was really great since considering this is a first-time event, and it was an extremely busy weekend with Hops Fest and the Discovery Center and all the things that were going on in town. So we also kicked off the wine walk with our ribbon cutting for our latest mural that's Wasco County, that's now at 2nd and Laughlin. We also had Adventist Health, Columbia Gorge. They were our Mural Fest sponsor this year. And they also hosted some booths at 2 locations, at the Granada and also at the Mural Fest location, to do some breast health sharing of that information, community outreach for them. And then we're also, like I said, mentioned, we're working on all these other things for the promotion throughout the end of the year. Design is the next category. The 2024 priority is lighting with our alleys and storefronts, light poles. Some of those are safety things. Some of those are just visual enhancement. It's looking at visual merchandising, new parklets, planters, enhanced signage, and then continued collaboration with the beautification committee. So Jared Sawyer and Chris Zukin, who are on our board, have generously donated some of their time and their staff time, as well as some tools and some of their shop space to help us refurbish some of the existing bike racks. That's actually in process right now. Those need to be taken down and repainted, powder coated, so they can look brand new again. So we're going to get that's happening as we speak. And then we're also working with the college and creating some additional bike racks to have those be installed as well, because we need to add some more. And so we've also been looking at and doing some lighting enhancements. So that's updating, like I said, the alleyways, because we have a lot of safety concerns. As you all know, as we get into those darker months, it gets really, really dark downtown. So we're trying to find ways that we can make sure we're enhancing that, and documenting those locations and getting working with our business owners to make sure that those concerns are addressed. We had 20 artists here to complete and work on the Wasco County mural. And that was replacing the damaged mural that was along 3rd Street where the farm stand grocery store is now. So that's a moving of that, which is really great to see something that had to be changed and adjusted and bring it back to life in a different location. And don't know if you have a chance to check it out, but it turned out really great. And then we had a really good spring cleanup before Cherry Festival and a fall cleanup before we did the wine walk with Columbia Gorge, Toyota, and Honda. They helped us with their annual Saturday cleanup to do that as well. For economic vitality, our 2024 priority has been to increase business communication and outreach, connect businesses to resources, leverage new website and social media channels, and establish quarterly lunches and business town hall meetings. So in July, we hosted a really well-attended town hall meeting and introduced all of our new board members, discussed the strategic plan, and we really met with great energy energy and excitement at that event. And then in November, we're going to start hosting our Main Street meetups with special guest speakers at the coffee shop at the Dalles Workshop on the second Tuesday of each month. So we're working with sharing resources that we have available through Oregon Main Street and some of the national Main Street resources, and then local resources as well for our businesses have an opportunity to share that. And then we have a new website coming that's almost complete with a fresh new look. And we're working with Columbia Community Connections on launching a new podcast to help highlight downtown merchants and what's all available, kind of why shop downtown, that sort of thing. And then organization, our 2024 priority was develop sustainable funding plan and identify and deepen partnerships and develop committee structure. So, and there we've added 4 new board members just recently. We voted on that. The board voted and added four new members that will complete their training this month and hopefully be able to take part in November. Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah, already arranged with Main Street to do that. And then, like I mentioned before, we really established some great partnerships working with the Mural Fest and Wine Walk with not only kind of some external businesses, but also other community partners such as Adventist and some other sponsors that were take part of that event. We've been actively recruiting volunteers to assist with our events and reestablish some of our committees. And then we're excited to announce that the construction for the Oaks Hotel that at Sigmund's has kicked off last week. So some of the refurbishing of that for phase 1. That was part of a grant that we received in 2023. And so we're also working to start applications for the next grant cycle for 2025, which is an opportunity to apply for a $400,000 grant through Oregon Main Street as well. And then finally, we're looking towards the future, 2025. So we're continuing to build and grow that momentum of what Main Street has done. The board has been working really, really hard to adjust to the changes that they've had to make over the last year. And so we have some board that's really ready to step back and have some fresh new faces come on. So they're going to be the remainder of this year will probably be spending some more time actively recruiting with that. And we're looking to also fill some additional committee and volunteer positions. We're continuing to look to promote our promotion of the pillar of all of our events and community-wide events for next year's schedule and determine what's the most beneficial for those businesses and what they would like to see. And it's listening to them and seeking out their input. We're also finding ways to further develop community engagement and grow that involvement to downtown revitalization. And board has been brainstorming to build sponsorships to work with our key community partners. And finally, with that, looking to hire a full-time executive director, launch a capital campaign, as well as continue with our sustainable funding model. So that's a quick and dirty version. I maybe talked really fast for all that. If there is any questions that you might have, be happy to answer them.
Maybe Kristen could introduce herself, and in your case, you better spell your last name for everyone.
Kristen Talamantes, board president. Talamantes is Talamantez.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Rich?
Yeah, Rod.
So driving through downtown for breakfast this morning, and you mentioned the Sigmund's building.
Yes.
So the brickwork that's being done on the side, that's part of your project there.
That's part of the grant project that they were awarded in 23.
In 23.
Yeah.
They were awarded 200,000. And so they're starting that. And then that's a partnership with Urban Renewal.
Yeah,
And then they're doing some private.
good.
Yeah, it's really great. And that's going to be really cool.
It was noticed.
I know, that's fun. Claudia's excited to paint.
Any other questions? Counselor Long?
How many board members do you have, and then how many are allowed for in your bylaws or whatever?
Kristen can probably answer that better because she's been in charge of board.
We can have 9 to 13 board members. We currently have 8. 2 are going to drop down. And so 2 will drop down, leave 6. And then we just brought on 5 more. So we'll be at 11.
Is that like a prescribed from Main Street? That's a pretty
It
big.
is. It is. And it's part of our bylaws too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. And then the capital campaign, what is that for?
It'll be a donor campaign for our events, for overhead, for staffing.
So that's not capital campaign though.
No,
Capital is like building something. I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out, okay.
no, it'll be a donor campaign for just
Okay,
operations.
For operations, okay. Thank you. That makes more sense. I was like, what are you going to build? Okay.
It's operations.
Those were my only questions. Thanks.
Anybody else? I've got a couple. Could you, I know your old board members, could you, you have a list of your new board members you could share with us?
I do. So the folks that came on 2023, we had Lindsay Giammi and Hannah Mapes, Mary Stock, myself, John Shaver, and then who's coming on is Carol Brown. She's a real estate agent here locally. Allison Turner, and she has the Skokium Outfitters, and then they also have a fishing guide service. Jason Miller, and he is with Zims. Julie Wadsworth, and then Natasha Scove. Sorry, I'm new to town. I don't know everybody's names very well.
Oh, yeah, she's with,
And then she's with Sunshine Mill.
Sunshine Mill.
So it's a fairly diverse board.
It's good.
And, you mentioned First Friday. I thought that was a separate organization. Are you guys taking that over or how does that work?
We've been currently talking with the folks at the Dalles, downtown the Dalles, yes. So yes, they're looking for us to take that over and decide if they want to continue with that or not. So they've asked us to kind of brainstorm with them to decide if that's something they want to continue doing First Friday, if they want to change it to a different day, what are they looking at doing? So that's something we've been talking about kind of over the summer. We're going to take a look this fall.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sorry. Run you over.
Item 6 is audience participation. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject which does not later appear on the agenda. Up to 3 minutes per person will be allowed. Citizens are encouraged to ask questions with the understanding that the city can either answer the question tonight or refer that question to the appropriate staff member who will get back to you within a reasonable amount of time. If a response by the city is requested, the speaker will be referred to the city manager for further action. The issue may appear on a future meeting agenda for city council consideration. Okay, I have 3 people who would like to speak to the city council for up to 3 minutes on an item that is not on our agenda. And the first is Lisa Farquharson of the Dalles Chamber.
Good evening, Your Honorable Mayor and our city council and staff. So I just have 2 things. Lisa with the Dalles Chamber, and that's what I'm representing tonight. We just want to do a reminder that our candidates forum for Wasco County is tomorrow evening. The doors open at 5:30. The forum begins at 6. This is not a forum where questions are asked from the floor. Questions are already established and sent to the candidates. But we have our city positions, our county positions, 2 of our state, the House and the Senate will be there, and a couple of the measures will also be there. So I just want to remind everybody, this is your chance to come and be informed and have that educated vote for when the ballots hit your mailbox. And then I do have a statement regarding one of the measures that is from the Dalles Chamber and the Board of Directors. And I just want to take this opportunity because it does affect our community. Today that we're urging you to vote no on Measure 118. This isn't just a tax on large businesses. It's a tax on gross sales, not profits, and affects every step from raw materials to store shelves. While it targets companies with over $25 million in gross sales, the cost will ultimately be passed down to all of us. Our manufacturers, agriculture producers, and businesses of all sizes will face tough choices, raising prices again, cutting jobs, or even closing. In an already strained economy, we can't afford higher costs for essentials like food, housing, and even utilities. Let's protect Oregon's businesses and our community's economy. Our board of directors and the chamber encourages you to vote no on Measure 118 and help keep our local businesses in business. And that is it. If there are any questions, if
Any
not,
questions for Lisa? Tomorrow night, you're going to have representatives pro and con for the measures?
the only one that cannot be there is 118, but we have an interview of both sides. The rest of them, people will be there.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Oh,
Online.
Councilor Randall has a question. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Lisa, where's that candidates forum going to be? Is that going to be at the chamber?
Oh, sorry. It's at the Mid-Columbia Senior Center, the most rockin' senior center in the state. Yes, it'll be there, and Scott will be ready with the doors open at 5:30. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dave Meyer.
Good evening. My name is Dave Meyer. I'm a small local cherry grower here in the Dalles. And tonight I'm going to try to represent Columbia Gorge Fruit Growers, an association of all the apple, pear, and cherry and grape growers in Hood River and Wasco County. The reason I'm here, my glasses here so I can read from script. The reason I'm here is to ask for your support, the City of the Dalles, in opposing a proposed rule change regarding agricultural labor housing by Oregon OSHA. Hopefully you all have a copy of a letter template in front of you prepared by our board chair, Leslie Tamara. I won't read the letter to save time, but in it spells out our position on Oregon OSHA's Section 16L rule change, which increases the space requirement from 40 square feet to 50 square feet per person. Oregon OSHA began reviewing and rewriting the current ag labor housing rules 6 years ago in 2018 and just finished up about a month ago. Stakeholders only have until November 3rd to provide public comment or testimony before the new rules are enacted. Why is this a concern for the City of the Dalles? We believe that beyond the significant economic damage it will impose on local growers here, there are potential social and economic impacts for the community as well. The thousands of people that make that 15 to 20 hour journey every year from California to the Dalles to pick cherries come here, I believe, for 3 reasons. Number one, the money. They can make more money here picking cherries than whatever it is that they're doing in California. That's the reason why they come. The climate, no matter how hot it is here in the Dalles, it's probably going to be 15 to 20 degrees cooler here than where they're coming from. And number 3, which is very important, the good agricultural labor housing we as growers provide free of charge. All of the growers who own or manage ag labor housing are licensed by the state of Oregon and are routinely inspected. There is no data showing a safety or health risk regarding the current allowable space we have been using for the last 35 years. If growers here in the Dalles have 20 to 50% of their beds taken away because of Section 16L in OSHA's new rules, where will the workers stay? In their cars, illegal camping, jamming too many people into motel rooms and rentals to save money? And how might this affect services such as police, medical, septic, and laundry, just to name a few? What we as growers are asking you to sign on for in the letter is asking Oregon OSHA to grandfather our existing structures that don't have safety or health issues from new space requirements. Start the new space requirements on future construction. And I would like to make an open invitation to counselors, whether it's collective or individually, if you've read or heard things in the news that sounds negative, I would invite you to call me and I would be happy to show you and take you through, give you a tour of our labor housing. And I know there are other growers as well who are very proud of what we do here. So,
Yeah, I think your 3 minutes is.
okay, well, thank you
expired.
for your time and any
Thank
questions?
you. Yeah, is there any questions for Mr. Meyer? Councilor Runyon.
or statements, et cetera. I've over the years toured many of the local orchards here. It's a large percentage of this housing we're talking about that's here compared to the state. Isn't it like 47% of all that housing is right here in this area?
That is correct. The Mid-Columbia represents the lion's share of the agricultural labor housing in the state of Oregon. And as part of that issue, I mean, and this can happen with any regulatory agency where you paint with a broad brush, and if things are witnessed in other parts of the state, on the other side of the Cascades, Southern Oregon or whatever, rules can be enacted that affect everybody. And we believe that Oregon OSHA has the rules and the law behind them to take care of bad actors, basically. I mean, we're the same as contractors. If you're a good builder, you kind of have your eye out for that guy that's out there not going through the permit process, that's skimming the system a little bit. And so we don't encourage or stand for, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want to come across as anti-OSHA. This particular rule, however, needs to be changed.
It just seems like to me that having toured a number of these orchards and the housing, and I know they're all really proud of what we do here for the workers that come to this area, and many of them are families that have been coming for decades, so I just hate to see us get penalized here for something, like you say, a bad actor elsewhere in the state, when a majority of the effect is going to be upon the growers in our own area. So I for one, am going to join in a letter, et cetera, and the council will make their own decisions on that. But it's not right, and they're not asking for the world. They're not asking you're not asking to stop their new rule, but at least grandfather in the good work that's already been done. I think that's a very fair way to go about it.
That's correct. When we build labor housing, ag labor housing, we essentially, and I started 35 years ago on my first building. We have a total of 3 buildings. You do this with Oregon building codes in one hand, and you do it with the rules of Oregon OSHA in the other hand, and you put that together. What's going on with Rule 16L is it's moving the goalpost 100 yards down the field and raising it up about 40 yards to make a field goal. And at this point in time, you can't make those structural changes. And a lot of space and beds are wasted in the process, and it will be exorbitantly expensive. A small operation like ours, I mean, we're just 150, 170 acres, but to build back the beds that we would lose would cost us somewhere between $1.2 and $1.4 million. And that is only if we can build, because half of us are in the National Scenic Area. And so there are, of course, limitations to what you can do within that area. There's a lot of protections. So that's just a small testimony, I mean, from my own standpoint. But all the growers up here will be affected very, very seriously.
You have our local legislators on board with you? Or are they working in Salem?
I believe and hope they are. That's more in the office out of Hood River that is working on that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Did OSHA dream this up on their own, or did they have pressure from an organization or from people that?
Good question. Yes, we believe that Oregon OSHA is being pressured on all of these rules, but especially this one, because the federal rule is at 50, and I'm not quite sure how Oregon OSHA has had an exemption up to this point in time. Right now, I am legal at 40 square feet, but after the rule, I am not. And so, yes, there is Oregon Legal Services. And again, I don't want to come down on Oregon. They do a lot of good work here in this community, in fact. But there are other factions that are very agriculture driven. And then there are other housing agencies and so forth. Yes, there are many people at the table when we sit down and argue rules with OSHA. There's a number of different housing agencies and legal services and people like that that are saying, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this. We saw this, we saw that, and so forth.
Do you have any idea what percentage of the housing units around here are under 50 feet?
I have everybody that I've talked to, and there's 3 or 4 that I haven't, but I've talked to as many people as I can think of, going door to door. And I haven't talked to anybody that is less than 23% capacity. My own personal, our own personal predicament would be if we had complied this year with this rule, it would have taken away 45% of our capacity. What that means is that we would have picked 55% of our crop. I mean, theoretically, right? I mean, I look at labor housing like a wheat grower looks at his combine. It's something that kind of goes away for 10 months out of the year, but at harvest time, it becomes your most important piece of equipment. And it's the people. We are a people business. We harvest our crop with people. And if we don't have a place to put them, that's the net result.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
I just have one other comment. I talked to a individual who is part of a family, and their family, their relatives come here and work for different orchards here. And they say, when I talk to them about this and what the impact might be, they say that we don't spend any time inside those structures. We are outdoor people. We work outside. We play outside. We usually have a picnic table or something out there beyond. We eat, we live outside. You know, it's really just for sleeping. And it's just to increase it. You know, people that just live in regular homes don't do this kind of work, don't understand that, you know, it's a different lifestyle. And it's not like we have to build a house for each one of them, you know, or expand it in some great manner, because that's not where they spend their time.
Yeah. Well, to that point, I mean, most of us have been upgrading our units with even before Oregon OSHA mandates it. We, as an example, we went back in 2017, we put in air conditioning. I mean, we kind of saw that coming. There will be new rules, and I don't think anybody's objecting to that. But when you take away this type of capacity, it's just unimaginable. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can I ask one brief question,
Sorry,
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Richards.
Mr. Mayor, what's the time frame that you need a decision or you need the city to weigh in on this letter?
The public comment period ends November 3rd. And so we've all been in a real scramble here. They just finished these rules up, like I say, about a month ago. And so everybody's running sideways trying to figure out what to do, who to talk to, and so forth. And being here in the Dalles, I volunteered to come speak with you.
Thank you.
Keep you aware of and so forth. But yeah, November 3rd. And there are some hearings also. And hopefully that might be on Amy, was there any information there? Okay, so if anybody wants to publicly speak on this, we would sure appreciate it. We're looking for all the open testimony, oral and written, we can get. We're going to need it because we know that the other side is going to be piling on. So.
Well, I suppose, you know, that's 19 days away. And I suppose that if the council's interested, we could ask the staff to draft a letter supporting your point of view, or just leave it up to us as individuals. And if you let us know when these hearings are and where they are, perhaps one or more of us can attend.
Do they have, Amy, do they have the letter in front of them? Okay. So that's kind of a recommendation, and it encapsulates, just to kind of save you guys time. If you're interested, it would be easy, hopefully, to just get everybody to sign something like that. But if we can get individual testimony and oral and written, we'll appreciate anything we can get at this point in time. We're pulling our hair out.
Mayor Mays,
Yes, Counselor McLaughlin.
I'll commit and join with Councilor Runyon in writing a letter, and I support all of your actions.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it, everybody.
Finally, we have Chuck Gomez, who wants to talk about basalt commons.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Chuck Gomez, and I'm also here representing my wife, Deborah Gomez, and many concerned citizens. I know this seems like beating a dead horse, but I would not feel right if I didn't at least come for the public comments with one last statement pertaining the basalt comments. There have been a tremendous conversations on the concerning issues of the Basalt Commons project. This comes from the businesses directly affected, the businesses indirectly affected, the homeowners affected, the loss of historic feel of the downtown, visual impact loss of gorge viewing beauty, housing needs being a majority need of 2 and 3 bedroom apartments needed, and the proposed reduction of those 2 and 3 units, parking for 120 plus units with the proposed reduction to approximately 30 plus or minus spaces. The project proposes additional storefronts, offices, and housing. Is that not what we presently have at the Commodore? And isn't the Commodore 40 to 60% vacant presently? I understand the council has voted on the current profile of the project, but this was not the original design as first set forth. If the developers can amend their designs, then many of us feel the council should be courageous enough to further review and also amend what is to be allowed. I speak for many asking, does the council and city manager have the courage to hear the voices of the community? In other words, changing course. Using Robert's rules to alter a prior action. It seems that a lot of confusion prevails within our local government bodies about the motion to reconsider and how it is to be used, when and how to reconsider a motion, and the other ways of changing your mind as a body. Amend something previously adopted. If the motion was passed at your meeting, there is another approach you can take. You can move to amend something previously adopted. There are different requirements for this motion to pass depending on whether it is made at the same time of the meeting or whether previous notice is given, and it is considered at a future meeting. In this case, the original motion is still valid, but you are proposing a change, something about it. This is the way, for example, that you can enact a change to minutes that were previously adopted. Any member can move this motion. For example, a member makes a motion. I move to amend the motion we previously passed by striking the height number 65 feet and inserting the number 35 feet.
Mr. Gomez, you got about 20 seconds, sir.
Strongly reconsidered the project's updated elimination of 2 and 3 bedroom units and provide adequate parking underground. If there is a second, the group debates the amendment and takes a vote. If it passes, the motion is amended. Thank you for your time on that. I would also like to say that we have purchased a home here in the Dalles, and I cannot thank PUD for being so easy to work with. The Wasco County Codes and Permits Department extremely easy to work with. Most of all, for this group that I sit in front of, the City Water Department that was Johnny on the spot and exceedingly helpful in doing anything we asked or what was to be needed for that house.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maybe someone on the staff refresh my memory at least on what exactly the city council voted on as far as this goes.
Was that an appeal that we heard in a quasi judicial
Yeah,
setting about
5 feet,
the height?
what we voted
Yeah.
on. Okay. Just wrote for the record. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item 7 is the city manager's report. Mr. Cleaves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will take this one step at a time. It's a little longer than I intended. I want to let the council know that city staff, we applied for a transportation growth management grant earlier this year to support a West Side area planning project. Unfortunately, we did not receive that grant award, so we'll have to continue to source funds and support to see that project come to fruition. However, Wasco County did receive a grant award from the same grant program to update their transportation system plan, which is quite dated, which will also benefit this region. I wanted to provide an update on the downtown tree project. Later this week, I believe, we'll be replacing the trees that had died earlier this year. When the contractor first came on board, they excavated and repaired the various tree wells that were located on downtown 2nd Street and planted 64 new trees. Unfortunately, roughly 40% of those trees did not make it. They died through a combination of tree type, watering, and weather. The contractor's been very responsive and equally frustrated with the results this year. We knew this would be difficult going in, and it's why we structured the contract and the contract that we have with the contractor accordingly. We've brought this contractor on for 3 years, and they will work with us to replace the trees to ensure that we have viable and successful trees downtown at no additional cost. Some of the changes that we did for the upcoming cycle is that we'll be getting larger, more robust trees. We'll be planting, obviously, in the fall instead of the spring, which should hopefully work. And we're going to increase the water schedule, adding mulch, adding fertilizer, and some additional moisture aid additive that should help the trees weather some of the warmer months that we have. There are several things coming down the pipeline. We have some very busy and robust council meetings in November and December, even into January. As the council may recall, we only have one meeting in November due to a holiday, and then one meeting in December, also due to a holiday. A couple of things coming down the pipeline. The FEMA floodplain update process is still going forward. There's a December 1st deadline that is causing significant consternation around the state. The governor's office has gotten involved and provided a letter to FEMA to extend that deadline. Staff's working as best we can with the information we have to date. There's a work session later this month that has rapidly filled up to provide some additional details. And we're going to be bringing that forward as best we can. It's likely going to be at the council meeting in November, and it's going to feel rushed because it is rushed. And so I just wanted to have that on the plate. Please let us know what questions you may have as we pull this information together just as best we can. We also have several projects to be awarded along with some different management plan updates. This includes the 6th Street widening project, the 12th Street sidewalk extension project. Spring, summer of next year, we have the 10th Street Safe Routes to School project. We'll be getting an update on the repairs to our digester unit at the wastewater treatment plant. We'll be awarding the wastewater master plan contract in the coming months, along with a forest management plan, water management, and conservation plan. So there's a lot of things coming down the pipeline. Just kind of want to have those on your radar as we move forward in these next few months. We'll also be having a work session on October 23rd, the final one for our water master plan effort. This is important for the council and for the public. There's been a lot of financial discussion to date to show that we're going to be looking at a need to increase water rates on some amount. Coupling this with some of the SIP conversations that we've been having, staff has been working on rolling out and developing a communications plan to keep the public informed through this process, what the results of the Water Master Plan update was, what we might be looking at as decision points in the future, and how we can use some of our additional resources that are coming down the pipeline to keep those water rate increases as low as possible. Last week, we had a visit from Congressman Bentz, which was really exciting to tour him around the city and community and a variety of different projects we have. This is a direct result of the community outreach team effort and the visits that they do biannually to Washington, D.C. And I want to give special thanks to Executive Assistant Abby for helping to coordinate the logistics with that. We also had an excellent first inaugural employee and volunteer appreciation barbecue a few weeks ago. That went really well, I think. And a couple last items here. Q Life, the fiber partnership that we currently have with Wasco County and the city of the Dalles, recently invited a new member, Northern Wasco County PUD. And with their support, we have hired a new executive director who will take over the reins of Q Life, which I'm very excited about. It'll free up my plate a little bit. And that will be Dr. Liz Lance, and she starts October 28th. We have the final housing production strategies work session with council and the planning commission last week. That'll also come before city council one final time for adoption. And later this week, I'll be attending the League of Oregon Cities conference in Bend. And I also had a radio appearance on KODL, that monthly first Friday of the month. Be happy to answer any questions you have. There's a lot there, but there's a lot of good work going on and wanted to provide that update. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager?
Have one. In November, we also have a goal setting session, correct?
Correct.
And that would be open to not only current counselors, but anyone who is elected but not yet sworn in, correct?
That is correct. So that is going to be an all-day session on Friday, November 15th. It's open to the public. Sarah Singer Wilson is our facilitator for that session. And as with all of our public meetings, everybody's welcome to attend. And I would encourage any candidates to attend this course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8, city council reports. We'll start with Councilor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also attended the October 3rd joint work session with the Planning Commission discussing the housing production strategy. On October 10th, I had an interview with Sarah Wilson leading into the goal setting session that we're having in November. And then going back to September 16th, I also attended the Q Life meeting where we met the new executive director. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilor McLaughlin.
I don't have a report for this session, but next time I will.
Thank you. Councilor Runyon.
Just one item. In fact, today, attending and presiding over the Mid-Columbia Veterans Memorial Committee and going over the an after-action report on the stand down that was held recently at the Civic Auditorium. And for all intents and purposes, it was well attended. So that's all I've got.
Councilor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few things. I'd like to report to my fellow councilors that our Plaza Committee, ad hoc committee, has been meeting a couple times a month, and most recently last Wednesday, and we are working diligently with plans to bring some draft designs before you all and the public this winter. A couple of other various meetings sprinkled throughout the last couple of weeks, including a couple today, one with the city attorney on several legal issues, and one with our annual goals facilitator. I was not able to attend the swearing in of our new police officer last week due to my own work schedule, but I did want to note improvement and just progress in staffing up our police department. Thanks, Chief and staff, for working on that so diligently. I attended the Youth Empowerment Shelter, or the YES organization's fundraiser last Thursday, and appreciate their work in our community. And speaking of which, the food bank has an empty bowls fundraiser on Friday, which I think is just the second one. And if you're free, I would encourage you to consider going and supporting them.
Thank you, Counselor Long.
Okay, mine's long too, but in my defense, it was 3 weeks worth. On 9/24, I had a community outreach team meeting and also a meeting after that with the city manager and the planning director, Josh Chandler, regarding the Basalt Commons, and also Mary Hanlon from the project was there. On the 25th, I attended the employee appreciation picnic at Lewis and Clark Park. It was very well attended and the food was excellent. On 10/1, I attended a meeting with the city manager, our usual one-on-one. On 10/2, I had a one-on-one meeting with the city attorney and signed some documents for urban renewal. On 10/3, I had an urban renewal agenda meeting, setting the next agenda for urban renewal, and also a city joint work session with the planning like everyone else. And on 10/9, Congressman Benz was here in town and I attended that tour. We spent more than half the day with him and it was actually a really productive and good network building session with him and his staff. And on 10/10, I attended the officer swearing in ceremony for our two newest officers and also attended the 10-year celebration for the Youth Empowerment Shelter, the Yes Shelter. And it was nice to see so many people, including law enforcement from the city and the county there, being supportive of that program and feeling like it's highly successful. On, let's see here. On today, 10/14, I had a meeting with Dan Spots following up on the community outreach team. There was some follow-up items that needed to happen because he wasn't able to go. And so we discussed those and just making sure that doesn't fall through the cracks. And I want to point out to everyone, the Urban Renewal Agency meeting is being rescheduled. It would typically be tomorrow night, but because of the forum, no, it's okay, Lisa. We rescheduled it to next Monday, which is 10/21, and it'll be at 5:30 here in the chambers. And we did make sure that everyone can attend. So even though we did that. Yeah. So, and that is my report. Thank you.
Okay, some of these have been mentioned. I also was interviewed on KODL by Al Wynn on Coffee Break. I attended the community outreach team meeting. Councilor Long mentioned that one. Also, the employee and volunteer appreciation luncheon, very excellent event. I also presided at the mural dedication. It's actually the history of Wasco County mural, which was mentioned by the Main Street people. The two gentlemen that were sworn in as police officers were Dante Avila and William Askey. I also attended that. And probably the highlight of my 2 weeks, I was a judge at the apple dish competition at the farmer's market on Saturday. I was one of the judges, and I think the city council would have been very proud of my vigorous participation. And with that, we will move on.
Mr. Mayor, can I make one more comment?
Sure.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that working with Jonathan Caro, we were able to successfully renew our quiet zone related to the trains that travel through our community. This is for the crossings at Madison and Union Street. The quiet zone prohibits the trains from using their horns at those intersections unless there's literally someone in front of them. And so that was something that I believe a councilor had mentioned some months ago. They wanted an update on, and that's been successfully completed. So wanted to add that as well.
Right.
I like it.
Before I could forget, Mr. Gomez, could you give the city clerk a copy of your remarks? And if you don't have an extra copy, just bring one by City Hall some other time. That'd be great. Thank you. Okay, consent agenda. Items of a routine and non-controversial nature are placed on the consent agenda to allow the city council to spend its time and energy on the more important items and issues. Any councilor may request an item be pulled from the consent agenda and be considered separately. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be placed on the agenda at the end of the action items section. Tonight, we have two items on tonight's consent agenda. First, approval of the September 23rd City Council meeting minutes, and second, the surplus of a city parking lot sign. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Looks like
Mr. Mayor?
Scott's raising his hand.
Counselor Randall.
Yeah, a question about the surplus of the parking lot sign. I didn't see any information on that. Is that, are we talking about the sign on the parking lot across from Ace Hardware?
Correct. This is for the proposed new parking lot on 3rd and Jefferson Street, just to the east of Sawyer's.
Okay, and what's the surplusing of the sign? What does that involve?
So staff is looking for the sign to be surplus so we can go through a bid process to dispose of the sign. And working with our Public Works Department, we're going to go through a local bidding process to solicit bids from the zip code area, most likely, to see if anybody's interested in that sign. It will involve whoever is successful in bidding on the sign will also be responsible for its removal.
Okay, thank you.
There's a short explanation on page 12 of the agenda packet. Very short. Okay. Okay, we don't have a motion yet, do we? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
And McLaughlin will second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Counselor Long and seconded by Counselor McLaughlin to approve tonight's consent agenda. Is there any discussion?
Yeah.
Counselor Runyon.
One other question about the sign that we're talking about, the old Sunset Motors sign that was there. Would that be something we could, as a city, make a donation if the Neon Sign Museum was interested in it?
So potentially, I think our intention here was to put it out for bids locally to give that opportunity for the Neon Sign Museum or whoever to express that kind of interest. A direct donation to a particular entity, I'd want to review the process that we have to see if that's allowable, or maybe the city attorney who is online has a comment on that process offhand. But that was part of the intent behind the local bid process, was to give that opportunity to organizations or individuals locally who may have a little bit more of an interest in the sign because it's something from our community itself.
I just hope we'll look at that option and see if that's available to us.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Kara, our city attorney.
Hi, thank you so much. I apologize for not being there in person tonight. I seem to have come down with something rather quickly, and so I thought it best to keep my distance. With respect to Councilor Runyon's question, I'm just looking at my other monitor here just to review the rules. These rules, of course, are the city's local contract review board rules, which council adopted the most recent update in February 2023. One of the options available for the disposal of surplus property in those rules is by donation. The rules as written include allowing donation to any organization operating within or providing service to Oregon residents, which is recognized as an organization described in section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. And so the city has the opportunity to donate surplus property to 501c3 nonprofits. If that is what the Neon Sign Museum is, then that's certainly an option.
I don't think so.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay. Any more discussion about the consent agenda? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
McLaughlin, aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 10A is consideration of an ordinance amending the city's municipal code in regards to short-term rental licenses. We'll call on our Director of Community Development, Josh Chandler, for a staff report.
Good evening, Mayor Mays, councilors, Joshua Chandler, Community Development Director. Hopefully everybody can hear me. My apologies. I'm not able to make it in person this evening. The next item we're discussing is adoption of General Ordinance number 24-1407, which is a general ordinance amending the Dalles Municipal Code, Chapter 8.02, that which governs short-term rental licenses. So we all know we've had quite a few discussions on short-term rentals for the past 18 months or so. There was one in May and October of 2023, as well as a recent discussion in July of 2024. The overall discussion led to the proposal of some amendments that are presented to you tonight. These mark the first revisions to the short-term rental program since the ordinance was adopted in late 2020. And the motivation behind these discussions arises from a growing recognition of community concerns regarding nuisances associated with short-term rentals. And most of these nuisances are particular to residentially zoned neighborhoods. Despite the low volume overall of formal complaints regarding short-term rentals, community feedback has highlighted some persistent issues. These issues most notably are noise disturbances and parking challenges that are linked to residentially zoned districts. In addition to those complaints or those concerns, staff has identified operational challenges, including some instances of non-responsive operators, discrepancies in operator reporting of transient lodging taxes. And as well, there has been discussions, counselors and community residents have raised concerns regarding the broader impact of short-term rentals and the availability on housing within the city. So from an enforcement perspective, the Dalles Police Department has reported minimal complaints related to short-term rentals and indicates most perceived parking issues stem from otherwise legal parking. And I think just maybe too much parking in a collected area. And there have been no documented noise complaints on short-term rentals for over 2 years. The police department does treat short-term rentals with the same level of scrutiny as any other accommodation, and further confirm that they remain committed to addressing any of these reported concerns. So this staff report really aims to synthesize the rationale for these proposed amendments, reflect the concerns of the community, and evaluate existing enforcement measures. During the 2023 meeting, City Council meeting, staff discussed various topics related to short-term rental related to the program, including the reclassification of types and a potential limit on overall numbers. Council expressed interest in establishing a moratorium at that time. So then come November 2023, Council adopted Resolution 23-039, which enacted a 1-year moratorium on short-term rentals of non-owner occupied short-term rentals. So the goal of this moratorium was really to give staff an opportunity to dig into it a little more and to address some of these concerns, to bring forward a set of amendments which we're discussing today. Overall, the impact of the moratorium may have stagnated the growth slightly of the program. We saw a drop of 51 units last October to 47 this October. Staff would attribute this drop, though, maybe not so much to the moratorium, but more of just overall attrition to the program. We did lose some short-term rental operators that just, decided from 1 year to the next, they just didn't want to operate. So that does happen year after year. Currently, 33 of the 47 short-term rentals are non-owner occupied units. So that was a statistic that was asked of council. So it is a majority of our short-term rentals are non-owner occupied. And 40 of those are located in residential zoning districts. So with the assistance of planning consultant MIG, staff analyzed some potential permanent changes to this program with case studies from comparable Oregon cities, offering recommendations for these revisions and STR's impacts on housing affordability. More information on this is included in the July 22nd, 2024 meeting. I won't go into that much more with this discussion here. But it does say, studies suggest that cities with restrictions on short-term rentals can mitigate affordability impacts, especially in areas with high short-term rental density. Recent discussions in June, most recently in June, focused on transient lodging taxes and laid out some visions for the council. And this council identified the importance of limiting short-term rentals to support businesses while maintaining housing and industry. Councilors expressed a desire to control short-term rental growth and avoid those challenges that we've seen over the years, most notably in Hood River. And with the discussion, council indicated that any changes to the program should mainly affect new accommodations and allow existing ones to continue operating. Staff considered a potential restriction on non-owner occupied STRs in alignment with the current moratorium. However, we decided to not move forward with that due to some current litigation over with the city of Hood River, which is a case there after making some changes. The city of Hood River was actually appealed 7 years after the fact. Regarding discrimination against out-of-state actors in violation of federal law. So jumping into it a little bit here, the proposed amendment topics, I'm going to touch on some of the big changes, and then I'll try to get into some of the others, maybe after some asking of questions, but there is quite a few changes that we've provided here. The red lines are included as Exhibit 1, so this will show you the changes that were made to your general ordinance. And some of these key revisions include imposing a maximum license cap. The city does not currently impose a cap on the total number of short-term rentals. So this amendment would actually put a cap of 1%, a cap on short-term rentals based off 1% of the total housing inventory based on the most recent housing needs analysis. So as detailed in the 2023 HNA, the proposed current limit is 71 total listings. So so that would be, as detailed in the 2023 HNA, there's about 7,100 housing units in the city of the Dalles. So therefore 1% would be about 71 total units. And for reference, there are 47 short-term rentals currently licensed. That is a typo in your staff report on page 28. It should say 47, not 45. So this was an example using this 1%. This was there's multiple examples with cities across the Western United States that use a 1 to 5% cap. And in a 2017 report assessing and responding to short-term rentals in Oregon prepared by the University of Oregon, it recommended that all cities should cap their STRs when units exceed 4% of their total housing stock. We settled with the 1% because it really seemed like this was council's direction to keep a limit on the total number of STRs in the community. So the next, 1 second here. So the next is implementing a lottery system for awarding licenses. This is something that we discussed. It was this or a first come, first serve type of discussion that we had. And we went with staff's direction here. It was kind of split with council in our last discussion. Staff went with a lottery system. This is something that was outlined pretty well with the city of Yachats. This is something that actually it creates a little more fairness on the matter. An individual wouldn't be able to come in and just reserve themselves as the next number. It actually provides that multiple individuals, once you reach a cap, it's all handled in a random lottery system. So ultimately, after accounting for all license renewals, the city would each new application would be submitted, added to this list, and they would have a set amount of time to submit all their information, or they forfeit their opportunity to move to actually have a license. And so how we built it into our code here is once an applicant is selected from the lottery list, they have 15 days to submit all their applicable fees and information, or they lose their place on the lottery list, and then it goes to the next person in line. The next is ensuring that existing licenses are current on their transient lodging taxes. This one seems like an obvious, but it is something that we needed to tighten up on a little bit. This has been an issue for staff tracking down operators with transient lodging taxes. So we wanted to be very clear. There's some changes in here basically to improve leasing accountability, and also is something that a collection of transient lodging taxes you need to provide proof of your previous year during relicensing, or your permit will get denied. So that has been, like I said, working with the finance department as well as the city attorney's office. We've had to chase a couple operators around in this past year or so. So we wanted to tighten up on the TLT collection. The next is adding a minimum proximity requirement for new short-term rentals in residential zones. So currently, as I mentioned, we do not have a cap on short-term rentals. We also do not have any type of vicinity requirement. So therefore, we have seen a clustering of short-term rentals, at least in one part of the city. We want to ensure that that doesn't continue in other parts of the city. So therefore, we would be creating a 300-foot buffer. So ultimately, one short-term rental could not be placed within 300 feet of another short-term rental. And this also, another change that you'll see in here is that we also increased our notification requirement. We're proposing to increase our notification requirement from 100 feet to 300 feet. So these two are consistent with each other. Expanding yard screening requirements. This is already something that's already built into our code. We just wanted to be a bit more clear on it. And this is to avoid, basically to cut down on any issues between properties, short-term rentals that may share a yard with another property, to avoid any meandering of guests into someone's backyard, ultimately. The next is allowing special events to be held in non-residential zones. Currently, special events are restricted at all short-term rentals. This would allow our non-residential short-term rentals to operate. So you have something located on 4th Street right here downtown. Probably it is definitely a better location to have some type of event than up in a neighborhood. So we wanted to allow the ability for non-residential STRs to have special events. There is requiring the acknowledgement of good neighbor guidelines. Good neighbor guidelines are really just rules that are provided. The city doesn't enforce these, but these are something that a lot of cities use. And it's making sure that every single one of your guests has a copy of these good neighbor guidelines. They talk to you about all the different ordinances and things to be mindful of, so guests have that information when they come to stay. Minimum parking requirements. Currently, there was a coming from our old bed and breakfast code, we carried this requirement over, which says that you do not have to provide parking until you have 2 rooms. So ultimately, 1-bedroom STRs had an exemption on parking. Parking has become, and it always is, one of our issues that we hear about with short-term rentals. So we want to make sure here that every single room has to have a parking space. And then the last is residency requirements. Currently we require various forms of identification when applying for a short-term rental. But really, we do not require owner occupancy now, and we're not proposing it. So this is just an added step and added information that we take in, that the operator provides. And it really doesn't do anything for us. It's just an extra step. So we're doing away with this residency requirement. Some other notable changes not included in your staff report. There's an annual renewal process. This is setting timelines for when applications need to be submitted for review. This is going to help with staff review, making sure we have licenses ready to go for the first by January 1st of the following year. It's a mechanism also for a new lottery system, and it's also an ability to maintain legacied or grandfathered status of a unit. So ultimately, you need to submit your application by a certain period of time, or you run the risk of losing your current standing as an existing non-conforming short-term rental. And then another aspect here that was added in, and it's an operation without a valid license. We wanted to add on to this a little bit more. This is something that we run into at times. We come across individuals that are operating a short-term rental without a license. we go through a process with them. It's up to, currently it reads that it's a $250 fine per day. But we do run into issues where individuals are maybe new to town. They're starting to operate. They don't know all the rules. So what this does is this creates this, basically our monitoring system, Host Compliance, will send a letter to these individuals requesting a response within 15 days. If they don't respond within 15 days, then we will issue an additional licensing fee if they choose to get a license. But also, if it continues to go and we continue to see operations without a license, this would give us the ability to ban a short-term rental for up to 1 year. I wanted to jump in really quick to something else that wasn't included here. We talked about, I briefly touched on it in the background, and this is about, this grandfathering in, or this legacied status for short-term rentals. And I think this is something that hits to a lot of the comments that we have received. I'm sure everybody has read the comments that are not only included in your packet, but we've also received some comments since October 3rd that are all on the Dalles. So there is concern. Probably some of the top concerns that we see still from individuals regarding these changes is that we are proposing to allow current short-term rentals to continue operating. So although this is the case, we do believe that we are building in various different mechanisms to ensure that those individuals are responsible operators, and they are making sure that they are following all of the rules, and effectively there are steps that can be taken that would make it so an individual loses their existing non-conforming status. So one of those would be no operation over a year. So essentially a lapse in operation would require a new license to be submitted. Therefore, that individual would lose their existing non-conforming status. So effectively, if you're operating this year, you take 2025 off, you come back 2026, you need to comply with all the requirements. So that is something that, although we are allowing these units to continue, I do believe it addresses some of the concerns that we are hearing. It is a way to kind of naturally attrition out some of these short-term rentals. Also, I wanted to touch on these comments that were received. I made notes of quite a few of the comments that came in. As we've discussed, there is the concern that we would be allowing the current clustering. I'll just call it out up in the scenic area. There's quite a few short-term rentals right close to each other. This current code amendment would allow those to continue operating. So you would still have a cluster of these short-term rentals. We did discuss with council, there is the ability in past conversations, there is the ability to phase out short-term rentals. We elected to not move forward with that, but it is something after further discussion. If there's any other discussion on the matter, the city of Hood River and the city of Cannon Beach have done these types of phasing out of short-term rentals. Also, there is, concerns about the notification and the vicinity area. So the vicinity area for short-term rentals and how close they can be. The original notification is 100 feet. We are extending that to 300 feet. This would be consistent with quasi-judicial land use actions, which is the city's most intensive noticing requirement for land use. And then in addition to that, this vicinity requirement, the short-term rentals cannot be located within, any closer than 300 feet from another short-term rental. This is an example that comes from actually the city of Coos Bay. They just initiated the same type of 300-foot vicinity. But there is some concerns in the comments that came in of extending that up to 600 feet. or 1,000 feet. And this would be up to council to make that decision this evening, following additional discussions. There was a question in here about reference to Title 10 concerning bed and breakfast as accessory uses, and they should be considered conditional uses. And in that code, it incorrectly references duplex conversions, Article 6.040, I believe it is. And this is actually just apologies on the confusion here. Bed and breakfast and vacation rentals were removed from the Dalles Municipal Code back in 2020. So this is just a typo. This is language that actually should have been removed from a previous code amendment. So that is an easy fix, and I do want to appreciate those who commented in. Thank you for flagging that. It will be on our next list of code cleanup amendments. And then I think I'd be more than happy to answer any other questions, but at this time, I think, council's alternatives are in front of you. Staff's recommendation is to move to adopt General Ordinance number 24-1407 by title only as presented. There's some other alternatives here, and more than happy to answer any questions, go into any of those comments further. And I'll leave the discussion up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. I think what I'd like to do is propose that the council not deliberate so much as ask the staff questions. And before we get into any serious deliberation or even a vote, I'd like to hear from any members of the public who would like to speak to the city council about this issue. So we'll go with the city council first, citizen input second, and then deliberation and a possible vote or whatever from there. Any problem with that? Okay. Questions for Mr. Chandler from the city council? Oh, Councilor Runyon.
Okay, and I'm looking at the printing, not the one I got in the email today, but the printing that has the red lines on it and so forth.
Yep.
And I'm looking right now at 8.02.100, existing and non-conforming short-term rentals.
Yep.
Okay. And in section A, which is about bed and breakfast and vacation rental permits, about halfway down, it says until the current rules apply until the expiration date established with the associated bed and breakfast vacation rental unit. And at that point, they go under the new rules. When I look at number B, right below that about existing short-term rental licenses, that line that I just highlighted about until the expiration date of the current license, it's not in there. Should it be in there? That they are under existing license until it expires and then it goes under the new rules?
Yeah, good question. So the bed and breakfast and vacation rental permit was actually something that was a 5-year land use application. And the 5 years started on the day that it was approved. It wasn't an annual licensure, so it wasn't from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So with A here, effectively, there's rolling deadlines, or there's rolling expiration dates for each of the bed and breakfasts that we have. I think currently there's only 3 left. And by by spring of next year, all of our bed and breakfasts will be gone.
Okay, but I'm talking about B now. Why don't we have a similar line in there that when their license comes up for renewal, that the new rules apply? I don't see that it does.
Yeah, so this was from previous council discussions. This was, the option to phase out or to allow the current operators to continue moving forward, basically grandfathering them in. If you're hoping to go the direction of ultimately making all of these short-term rentals, once they expire at the end of the year and they all have to come into compliance, that would be a different discussion and it would be a different direction that I've received in past conversations.
It just seems to me that's been most of the complaints. And if we don't have something that changes how those STRs continue, we're right back here again.
Yeah, and I'm more than happy to look into that. There's questions about a takings clause. Starting January 1st, there are multiple short-term rentals. If you think of the clustering that occurs up on Scenic, there's about 5 of them that are all within a 300-foot vicinity. One of those 4 could be in operation. The other 4 would be put out of business. So the city would really need to analyze the takings of those 4 units if that's the direction we would like to go. The city of Hood River and the city of Cannon Beach did a 5-year and a 7-year phase out. I'd be more than happy to look into that further if that's the direction of council. No problem at all.
And how long are the STR licenses?
They're good for 1 year, January 1st
1
to
year.
December 31st.
I don't know. It's just something it just sounded like it was missing when I see it in one paragraph and not in the next, but I don't know.
I have a question about takings, but I'm going to refer to our city manager. Go ahead.
Council, I just wanted to emphasize in provision B there that the exemption that we're talking about is only to the vicinity requirement and the parking requirements unless they're in that residential zone. So it's not that it's an exemption from all the different rules and changes that we're looking at. It's those 2 components in particular because of some of the considerations that Mr. Chandler made.
It's a lot of paper.
When you use the word takings, you're really talking there about the city paying compensation to people that are affected. That's what a taking is, isn't that right? So just so
Yeah.
everyone
Yep.
understands. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So I guess the answer to my question is that there are other rules in here that'll take care of those problem issues that we've been hearing about.
Well, I think one of the challenges here with the vicinity dynamic is that with that exemption in section B, it won't impact that clustering effect that we see up on Scenic, which is part of the reason why we want to address these concerns as proactively as we can be to avoid similar impacts in other areas. If we didn't have that exemption in section B, as Mr. Chandler noted a moment ago, we'd have to see which one of those gets to stay in business and which other ones go out of business.
And by that same analogy, if one of those closed and became just a regular house again, they wouldn't be allowed to be there as a STR in the future because there'd be too many, too close.
Yep, the vicinity requirement would take effect.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and that would be that lapse of it would ultimately be a lapse of 1 year, I assume, if they turn it over to long term.
Okay. Councilor Long.
So question about that. So since we're having particularly problems with that cluster, if those people are violating the good neighbor rules, like what are the specific triggers? Like, do you have a certain number of documented complaints, or how is it fair so that if they are having parties or having special events, basically flouting the rules, can they lose their license? What does it take to make that happen?
Yeah, so we would need to have multiple documented violations. And that is currently the process that we have. As I mentioned, there are, some concerns that have come to light, but I did verify with the, police department that, for instance, noise complaints have been quite minimal with short-term rentals. So we do need to have documented violations. And I would say that one thing that would help, if there is an issue going on, we would be happy to receive video of video of an issue. But also, I mean, if it's raising to the point where it is a noise issue, we do have noise ordinances in the city, and those can be called in. You can you can call the police department if you do have a noise complaint.
So we need to make the process more clear to people about what we want from them, because it seems like some people are just trying to also be good neighbors and not call the police for every little thing. But now we're saying we need certain documentation. So I feel like we need to help them understand the process and make them feel comfortable taking those steps.
Mr. Mayor, can I jump in just for a brief second?
Yeah, City Attorney Jonathan Kara.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to clarify the grounds with which the city is authorized to revoke an existing STR license. Those are listed in the, if we're all looking at the red line, that's page 57 of 88. Towards the bottom, there's a whole section, 8.02.130, connected with revocation. I believe the Community Development Director mentioned multiple violations are required. That is true only with respect to the imposition of a 12-month, multiple violations. The occurrence of 3 or more violation convictions within a 12-month period resulting in fines is certainly grounds for revocation. But any violation of the municipal code with respect to the property's operation is grounds for the revocation of the STR's license. And so the city handles codes enforcement on a complaint-driven basis. And so if complaints are filed and evidence is submitted or otherwise recovered by the Codes Enforcement Office and the Codes Enforcement Division connected with the operation of an STR, the city is well within its authority to revoke that license, even upon one documented violation, if the violation is egregious enough. And so evidence, can take the form of many different types. We're basing that standard off of what the municipal judge has typically required to uphold prosecutions for violations of the municipal code in other areas. To give an example that I think would maybe drive this home, the city has a noise ordinance, but we also have a dog control ordinance, which makes uncontrollable and long-term barking of a dog, it deems the dog to be potentially considered to be a public nuisance. And under our dog control ordinance, the municipal judge has made it clear that in order to sustain that action, typically what he'd expect is somebody just pulls it. We all have cell phones. They all have great cameras. Pull it out, even if it's the middle of the night, and document the noise violation that you're talking about. Contact codes enforcement or the appropriate party, in this case could be the CDD director, and submit that evidence. And the city takes codes enforcement on a complaint basis. And so if that evidence is sufficient to establish a violation, then the city will proceed as appropriate. Hopefully that helps clarify some of these nuances.
Thank you.
Sure.
Counselor, did you have any other? Counselor Long?
Oh, no, but I would say that I think that our language around this, when they're applying in their packet or whatever, needs to be really stern and indicate, that we're not messing around here, because I don't want anybody trying to wiggle out of it saying, oh, they didn't understand. They thought it was a suggestion rather than something serious, because we are serious about this for our citizens.
Yes.
Okay. Other counselor questions?
Just one other thought I would have as we go forward here, that we have some sort of a review process like we've done with other ordinances and resolutions over a period, whether it's 6 months or a year, to see how it's working as is, and if if changes need to be made or updated. That's what I'd put out when we get to that point.
Okay.
Yeah,
Counselor
we'd be
Richards?
happy. We'd be happy to provide an update at the 6-month or 1-year mark.
Thank you. I appreciate my fellow counselors' comments. I agree with both Counselors Long and Runyon on those points. I am wondering if any other counselor has an appetite to consider increasing the STR buffer zone modestly, but from the proposed 300 to maybe 500. If you look on your map provided and kind of visualize that, 500 feet on the, using the standard buffering mechanism, the GIS buffering mechanism, would be a couple of blocks rather than like a 1-block radius. I might actually put this up on the table for anyone who wants to see it. It might be useful. 1,000 feet is draconian. It's very dramatic. It's blocks and blocks, but 500 feet is seems like that might be a feasible thing to consider. So I'm putting that out there for my other counselors to.
I'd actually made that note on here and just noted it's approximately a 2-block area.
I raised that issue with Mr. Chandler earlier today and asked him if there was any downside to Well, Counselor Richardson used the word draconian. I mean,
Dramatic. It's dramatic. It's a very restrictive.
yeah, I just want to
Radius.
get the staff's input on extending that, whether it's, I really think we need to go higher than 300, whether it's 500 or 1,000 feet. I'm open-minded, but do you have any thoughts on that, Mr. Chandler?
Um, I think whatever's the council's flavor, honestly. I'm more than happy to, 500 to 1,000. Either one works. The only thing to consider when we extend it, up to 1,000, if it goes that far, I would want to be mindful of possibly a fee increase coming around the first part of the year to allow for the additional increase in notifications. The map that we provided to you, I know this is downtown, so the lots are a little bit smaller, but that shows at a 300-foot notification area, 41 properties compared to 1,000 foot is 237. So staff would need to put our heads together to figure out maybe how we could compensate for that additional, and maybe that results in increasing the overall fee for a short-term rental license. But I do think that the program should pay for it. The license should pay for that additional noticing to some regard. But other than that, no, not many concerns.
Okay, I have some others here, but I'll give the rest of the council a chance to ask questions of the staff if there's any others before I weigh in. Anybody? What?
I like 500 as well.
Yeah, before we leave here today, perhaps the council can give the staff some direction on that particular issue.
I like 500 as well, Mayor Mays.
I want to note, Mr. Mayor, that this is for residential areas, the buffer. Bed and breakfast within the central business commercial zone wouldn't be affected.
It's for the buffer or it's for the notification?
I was speaking for the buffer. I'm happy with increasing the notification, but I mean the physical buffer. So for instance, on page 45 of our packet, I think it is, vicinity requirements, no short-term rental may be located within 300 feet of any other existing blah, blah, blah within residential zoning districts. And I'm wondering if we might think about.
We did increase that though, didn't we? That's currently, oh no, it's currently 100.
Okay.
If I may,
Yeah.
may clarify, Mr. Chandler, would it be your opinion that whatever the vicinity distance is would also be the notification distance to keep that consistent? So if we went to, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think the consistency of our proposal right now, moving it from, the notice area from 100 to 300 is also consistent with the 300-foot buffer. Yeah, I think keeping it consistent would be great.
I just want to be absolutely clear on this grandfathering issue because it's been mentioned several times, especially in the correspondence. It doesn't mean that existing short-term rentals would not have to comply with the new regulations. For example, we've been talking about this buffer zone and the notification requirement. If a application came in for a new STR, okay, we would still have to, under the new regulations, we would still have to comply with that, whether it's 300 feet or 500 feet or 1,000 feet from existing short-term rentals. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. But basically those that are already existing today that are closer than 300 feet to each other, maybe that are, right down the street from each other, those ones, when they apply come January 1st, they don't have to comply with the vicinity requirement or the parking requirements. If we do that, then we do run the risk of, we needed to look into it further. Happy to do that, but there's typically like an amortization process where you're slowly phasing those things out. Because like I said, we have 5, I think we've heard up in the scenic area. It would be 1 out of the 5 can continue to operate, 4 of them go out of business. If that's something
how would requiring a new licensee to be more than 300 feet away from an existing STR constitute a taking at all?
No, it'd be a new license coming in. A new license wouldn't be able to locate within that cluster I was just talking about. But for a relicense, any one of those properties that we're relicensing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I
As
think
well
there's-
as parking, because we do know that there is at least maybe one or two short-term rentals that do not have enough parking. So this would also be one of those things that if they were to comply with the new parking requirements come the first of the year, that could potentially put them out of business.
I get that.
Okay.
Okay, let's take screening. Would existing STRs have to comply with the new screening requirement?
Yes.
Okay, good. The good neighbor policy, would existing STRs have to adopt and sign off on a good neighbor policy?
Yes, and how other cities have done it, the other cities actually, examples that I've seen, the city actually prepares the good neighbor guidelines, and they are something that is just provided to the host or provided to each of the guests, and they have it at the location. So yes, everyone would have those good neighbor guidelines.
Including existing STRs?
Correct.
Okay. Question on the third bullet point down on page 29, where you talk about the parking requirements. What is the definition of a guest room? Is that a room? It's not a
Any
bedroom.
room. Any room, yeah.
Okay.
Any bedroom, correct.
It's been suggested by some of the correspondents that we publish a list of short-term rental addresses, the names of the managers and phone numbers. You did not recommend that. You want to speak to that issue?
Yeah, so this is more so not something that would be included in the ordinance itself. This would more just be an administrative task that could be done. There's a couple other in previous discussions, there's a couple other administrative tasks, if you will, that I would like to see the community development department and working with the finance department take on. Some of these are, updating, having a web page that's easily navigable for short-term rental licenses, relicenses. But we could have it on that web page, a list of short-term rentals around the city.
Great. Have the staff given any consideration to some of the suggestions that we give neighbors the ability to expect more timely responses to their complaints, specifically the noise issues?
Yes, I mean, more than happy to respond when the complaints come in. I know a couple of the complaints, the concerns that have come up have come, at least that have been provided to me, have been provided at the city council level. When the concerns are coming up from the neighbors, they're bringing it to the city council. As I mentioned, I brought up the police department earlier. The reason I bring up the police department, the code enforcement division is within the police department. So saying the police department, it's really the code enforcement division. In all honesty, I do not receive a lot of concerns over noise to my office directly, but more than happy to take those on. If those concerns come in, we'll do our best to address them. But as far as, providing a response, we would need to see a few more formal complaints come in to do so.
I don't want to speak for the neighbors, but I think the feeling there is it's not so much that I think it's a more immediate response, because by the time, if it's on a weekend, especially by the time they file the complaint and, we don't work weekends and our staff gets around to looking at it on Monday, the problem has gone away.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I have to cut in. That's true for everybody. There's 6,000 residents in the Dalles, households more or less in the Dalles, 6,500. Most of us have neighbors. We all have that limitation. We all, if my neighbor is, out of hand and rowdy, I don't have a special phone number. I have to call the police, I have to go over myself or call the police if it's the middle of the night. And I guess I'm leery of trying to work in some other special response team or something. We have codes during the day and we have police 24 hours a day.
No, I just think that it should be addressed, and not necessarily through a code revision or, I appreciate your point of view, but
Well, we have noise ordinances in the community anyway. If there's a loud party going on 11 o'clock at night or whatever, that's after the noise ordinance anyway. It'd be handled by a call to the police station. As far as ongoing complaints, making a list of them is going to work towards having several complaints may affect them, their ability to renew their license. But the immediate thing will be handled by
well, and I understand
city police department.
she should be raised tonight, and if somebody else doesn't raise the issue, I think we have we've obviously heard a response for that.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
if I may draw the council's attention to page 54 of the red line. And Josh, sorry if I'm cutting in here a little bit. I just wanted to mention subsection E contact information. That's a component to, at least in some way, to the point that you're raising here. And the update that the contact for the STR must be available to be contacted by a city representative within 1 hour, change from 24.
Yeah.
thank you. The final point I wanted to make was to ask about, to the extent that non-owner occupied short-term rentals create, I would say, at least 90% of the issues. We do charge a license fee, and that's an annual fee. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. What is the feelings about charging, to the extent that non-owner occupied short-term rentals create most of the issues, is charging a higher fee, a license fee for non-owner occupied short-term rentals?
I think Jonathan, if I could have your perspective on it, I think you and I have actually had a side conversation about this.
Sure.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Mr. Mayor, I'd be a little skeptical about that. First of all, as the staff report indicates, and as an email that I saw from our police chief, who I'm not sure if is in the room tonight, maybe he is.
He is.
Has mentioned, there hasn't been any complaints given to the police department under this program for the last 2 years. As the community development director indicated, all of those complaints, any such complaints, have been brought to the city council's attention, rather inappropriately, I think, consistent with what our code allows for. Now, I know that there's been some call for updating the provisions of our code regarding the way that complaints are addressed or submitted. You might notice in this red line, there hasn't been a single change to that section. It's unclear to the city staff, and I'll just speak for them on this, as I've been working on this with them for the last year, on what else to offer. With that said, on the issue of charging non-owner occupied STR facilities a higher fee, I would caution against that. There's been a couple of references to the Panabaker versus City of Hood River case. The central focus of that case is the way that the City of Hood River has been alleged to treat what they consider to be out-of-state actors, i.e. non-owner occupied STR operators, unfairly or discriminately. And the allegation in that federal case is that the city's unfair treatment of those operators has had the impact of burdening interstate commerce in violation of federal constitutional laws. I would rather this city not resort to what seems to be penalizing these out-of-state actors or non-owner occupied residences that are operating STRs by charging them a higher fee, especially in light of the fact that in the last 2 years, there haven't been any complaints about any STR operations. And so I'm just going to be candid with you, since you're asking for my opinion. There it is. I'm happy to support it further or answer any questions about it. I just think that charging them a higher fee is a non-starter.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, who would like to go first? Ms. Carpenter, please identify yourself and your address.
Mayor Mays, and my name is Sally Carpenter. I live here in the Dalles. Council has previously heard from me and a number of my neighbors who are present. And I first wanted to confirm with the city clerk that our latest correspondence as a result of Mr. Chandler's October 3rd letter has been not only circulated to the council, but also added to the council packet. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. My neighbors and I have shared with you some really important points around these very issues. And I did want to respond and inquire about some of the discussion tonight, if I could. I wanted to specifically thank Councilmember Long for acknowledging that we, the neighbors, have been trying other approaches other than just calling the police for every single little dinky thing that crops up from these STRs. A lot of them are small scale, but over time have become cumulative enough to be quite worrisome, and which has brought my neighbors and I to the council to report what's going on. And reporting to the council is sufficient, in my opinion, to give notice to the council about cumulative problems going on. And as a resident taxpayer of the Dalles, I'm frankly insulted by Mr. Kara tonight to say that to bring such concerns to the council is inappropriate in his opinion. Is the right thing to do for residents, taxpayers to bring their concerns to their elected officials, and frankly, not bother the police department with every single tiny rinky-dink thing. Also, it's quite insulting by Mr. Kara to claim that we all have cell phones. We should all pull out every cell phone in the world and record these things to send to codes enforcement. Not everybody has cell phones. That's insulting to a number of people who choose not to have them or maybe can't afford them. And that's a big leap in thinking. That's just not right. Third of all, I know professionally from my own angle that to have sworn police officers is an expense to the city. The city has to do all kinds of steps, include educating their sworn police officers to get to that sworn status, to even achieve that basic police certification, let alone to get to intermediate and advanced certifications. It's an expense that I don't think our city should take on to burden the police department with every single tiny rinky-dink complaint to come out of all of these STRs. They are cumulative. They are bothersome enough that my neighbors and I have come to you on repeated occasions to bring to you what I consider very formal complaints. This is about as formal as a setting as it gets for a citizen to come talk to its council members, its mayor, and its manager. I appreciate y'all's time. I appreciate showing respect to me and my neighbors, something that is quite significant to us. I've put all my thoughts in writing. I don't have anything to add on top of that. I'm open to questions from the council, mayor.
Well, I just want to, in defense of Mr. Kara, I think what he was saying is if there was a cell phone, and it doesn't seem beyond the realm of possibility, it'd be easy for a resident to, if they had a cell phone, to take a picture of the violation. I would also submit that we appreciate hearing from you. I know I do. I think everyone on the, every elected official here tonight appreciates hearing. But I think, my opinion is that you would get better results and quicker results by contacting the police department instead of the city council. I think that's what, he can defend himself, but I think that's kind of my take on the situation. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Carpenter or comments?
Mr. Mayor, please go ahead.
I was going to thank Mayor Mays for that. What I'm taking as a professional, a directive to the people of the Dalles to start calling the city with things like noise complaints, parking complaints.
And we appreciate your sensitivity too about.
A lot of us have tried to take a lesser approach, including what we consider neighbor to neighbor contacts, reaching out directly to these short-term renters. I know a number of us have actually done that to say, hey, can you keep the noise down? Hey, can you address the dogs locked in a car on a hot summer day that I know belong to you? And we've tried those neighbor to neighbor approaches, and we're getting really either poor results or no results that we feel are appropriate. And so in the future, we will simply call the police.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Unless the chief disagrees with what I said. No? Okay.
Well,
Well, look, I'm sorry, Councilman.
no, go ahead.
I guess I want to say to Ms. Carpenter, I hope that you see that your council has taken the sort of the mounting evidence and the mounting number of complaints from the neighbors there pretty seriously. We did put in a moratorium on new STRs. We are bringing force of law to the situation, and in a fairly comprehensive fashion. And at the same time, and also, we are encouraging neighbors to take the traditional route. If there is a ruckus that you feel is out of hand and you're uncomfortable, then you call the police. If you don't like the look of somebody and they're making, you wish they weren't there, maybe that's not a police matter, but this ordinance, should it be passed tonight, hopefully we'll start addressing sort of the cumulative effect.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned I could certainly speak for myself. May I speak for myself?
Sure.
Thank you. No, just with respect to some of the comments from submitted by Ms. Carpenter, the code itself is the council's expression of its policy through legislative action. The code itself, as I mentioned in this proposed red line, doesn't make any changes to the section dealing with complaints regarding operation of STRs. It's in 8.02.110. That's remaining unchanged. Frankly, the code itself is what dictates the process that the city council, when it adopted this code 4 years ago now, was intending the public to take with respect to those complaints. And it simply says that a complaint shall be in writing and state the nature of the objections to the facility, which I know that you personally have done and some of your neighbors have done as well. Complaints must be submitted to the Codes Enforcement Division, which they weren't. And so I'm not trying to be, obstructionist or picking at the, the nitty gritty here, trying to find a loophole to not help or to give an excuse for the city not to help. But to characterize those as appropriately submitted would be, I think, factually incorrect. It wasn't my intent to insult you on that. With respect to what I mentioned earlier about having cell phones in our pockets, that is a paraphrase from our municipal court judge in the context of dog barking, dog as a public nuisance complaints, and the standard with which he has indicated the city of the Dalles Municipal Court will assess evidence of prolonged noise or unnecessary noise or annoying noise. The court has indicated it will assess that evidence based off of the cell phones that we all carry in our pockets. And that's more or less exactly what the court indicated. And so again, I wasn't trying to be insulting. I was just trying to anybody in our community, I just wanted to convey what our court has indicated historically and as sort of an analog to help support future enforcement endeavors against non-compliant STR operators. Hopefully that was helpful. Please let me know if you have any other questions on that, Mr. Mayor, Council, or Ms. Carpenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karen.
Thank you.
Okay. My turn now.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So then I would like to propose some changes to 8.02.110 regarding complaints. I think that there should be multiple ways that are all easily documented. We can have the neighbors do the neighborly thing and contact them and then send an email to codes enforcement saying, and just so that there's a record that they did take some action, because this is not ultimately going to the actual people there committing the problem. It's the owner operators. However, if it's not safe to approach them or it's something more serious, then I think the police department's non-emergency number could be called, and the non-emergency staff, as they have time, which I know a lot of times they do, and sometimes, of course, there's emergencies going on and they don't, but they could make a call to the owner operators, and that triggers the 1 hour response. because we have the phone numbers, correct? If people have the phone numbers, we could also make it that they could contact them and then they would have a record if they have a cell phone or caller ID. But if the police department makes the call, then we know exactly when it happened. And if it's more serious than that and it's a really big problem, they should just call 911 and the police can determine how best to come out. Because I think what we want to do is make this good for our residents and we want to make it easy. And if it gets out to the owner operators that we're taking it seriously and we're taking these actions and that they're immediately getting the consequence of potentially losing their license, then they're going to step up. And I don't think that we need to make it easy on them. I think we need to make it easy on our residents.
Are you suggesting that something go in the code about that, or is that
Yep.
something?
So it's not just a written complaint. It can have multiple avenues of
as
getting a
opposed to
response.
administration? Yeah. Okay. What else do you have?
That's what I.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
question
ahead,
and some
Mr.
clarification
Chandler.
with that.
Yeah.
So in the event that the neighbors are able to, a neighbor is able to chat with one of these operators, are we saying that is the first complaint?
I would think that if the problem is rectified using those steps, it is not something that's going to trigger their license going away. However, we want a documentation of that because if it continues on, that owner operator has choices. They can screen their people better. They can have a contract with them that, however they want to handle it. That's not our problem, but they are responsible for that. And we need to put the pressure on them.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other members of the audience? Yes, ma'am. You come forward, please.
My name's Carol Earl. I live at 420 West Scenic Drive. I really wasn't prepared to speak at this gathering. I did write a letter with my concerns. And honestly, it's been a very frustrating experience. If I wouldn't know how to contact an owner operator because I don't have their name and I don't have their number, but I do know that one person has bought the majority of these rentals and turned our residential district into a business district. And it's a moot point though now because it's done and gone. And if there's any way
You're suggesting
that the codes need to be enforced. And because you wouldn't, if someone came in and wanted to put a Best Western up there on Scenic Drive, it's a residential area. You couldn't do it. But now this person has bought multiple places and it's become a business district. So, and the other thing I had a question for, if you have a 300-foot buffer, is that 300 feet between houses or 300 feet between the lots?
It's a radius, isn't it, Mr. Chandler?
It's 300 feet measured from the edge of all property lines.
The edge of the property line.
Yeah. So not an exact radius, but it's.
I don't have the Aggies have a wonderful establishment and they don't live in it, but they live nearby so that they're keeping tabs on what's going on. There's no complaints. Nobody's keeping tabs on what's going on in our neighborhood. There have been reunions up there of different sorts. There's been parties, the traffic jams. It's been a mess. And when they come time to have their license renewed, you guys shouldn't be so hesitant about blocking their renewal. If those houses were open for residentials or residents, they'd be on the tax rolls and they'd be paying into the city. I don't know what, anyway. I'm just venting my frustrations. Thanks for listening. I did like some of the changes that were in the new letter. However, still stuck with this density. Most percentage of short-term rentals in our neighborhood far exceeds the percentage of what you want per community.
Earl, do you think it would help if you had one phone number, for example, the non-emergency number or whoever we designate, just to call and give them the address, and that's the extent and report what's happening? Do you think that would make it easier for you?
Probably. I know at least one neighbor who has contacted the owner directly rather than calling the,
Mm-hmm.
um, like probably most people. I hesitate to call the police too if it isn't absolutely necessary.
Sure.
It's just that I moved into a residential area that's become a business area. That's it.
Fine, thank you. That's why we're here tonight, to try to alleviate a lot of those concerns. Ms. Wakefield.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Josh. I'll be concise. I totally agree with what you said about residential being turned into business. I am a resident and business owner at 3735 Clint Drive. It's located in the Riverfront Business Park HOA, which I am a member, but I am not here representing the Riverfront Business Park. I came here to express my concerns and to gather some information. My concern is there's 8 townhouses right next to me. They are being currently operated as Airbnbs and short-term rentals. The HOA has given permission to allow 1 short-term rental. There's a constant stream of coming and going. I don't know if these guys are licensed. They do what they want to do. I would like to reference Pat Matson's letter he sent to you on September 23rd, 24th, which expresses a lot of my concerns about this. When you mention about the cluster up on Scenic, what's happening down on the riverfront is a cluster. There's 8 townhouses. I don't know how many are being operated as Airbnbs or short-term rentals. They are compact like this. I don't know if City Council is aware of that. I don't know if anybody else is aware of that, because I don't know if these people have declared that they are operating as Airbnbs or short-term rentals. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Mr. Chandler, were you aware of that issue, of that particular cluster?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
there's 2. I'm unclear if there would be more operating out there or not, but I do know about the HOA concern that was raised as well.
Thank you. Okay, there was a hand in the back. Oh, Ms. Oldenburg.
I'm Jan Oldenburg, 2151 Radio Way. Thank you for listening to us tonight. This is a complex issue. There are legalities, there are emotions with the community, and you're hearing it all. I feel that a number of you have a better understanding. Perhaps it's because we have attended the meetings before. Perhaps it's because we've written to you. Thank you for reading what we have written to you. And I'm hoping that we can come to better agreements. I do feel from the meeting tonight that I think that our neighborhood needs to feel the city will enforce the rules that we already have. And I feel that we haven't felt that we've had that enforcement before, from having to wait because the code enforcer doesn't work on the weekend. So what do? Well, we'll just let it go. Things along that line. I do feel that we need to, as a city council, be more specific in regards to what we request of the non-resident SDRs to do. We need to have these things in writing. When we say, I think it's a good idea to give the owners the rules for them to give to their guests, we need to do more than that. We need to request where that is going to be posted. They are going to sign that they're receiving it, and they need to also make sure that the person that is renting has signed that so they understand what the rules of the neighborhood are. You see, things along that line we need to tighten up. And so I feel that when we are doing this new ordinance, we need to look at the details because that comes back. We don't want to go through this again. Like Councilman Runyon says, well, we don't do this right the first time. Guess who's going to be here at the meeting next year? Yeah, we all will be. And so, but we do recognize your work and we do recognize the complexity. We just ask that these points are well taken, but I see in each of these points things that we need to tighten up, perhaps change. I don't know if we need to have an additional time given to the moratorium. Are we okay with everything that's being said to vote on this tonight? Or do you feel that we still need to work on this? I would have to give that to you, obviously. You're the ones that are making the rules. But that's something that maybe we need to consider. Maybe we need to extend the moratorium for another several months until we get this. Maybe we need to have a committee with the neighborhoods and work along that way. So we have someone that is a representative of the neighborhood be involved with you, the city council. Just throwing that out to you. But thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Are there any questions?
Oh, any questions for Ms. Holdenberg? Yeah.
My name's Terry Armitrout. I'm a resident of the scenic area. And the question I have is about the consideration of capacity. Talk about parking spaces and rooms and what have you. I think it would be prudent if we made it clear that when we're using those kind of terms, that we connect the verbiage in the ordinance of a room being a room that is defined in the International Building Code, so that you don't have closets and other things becoming rooms and packing more people in the building code would allow. I think that should be clear in your ordinance. You're listening and.
Thank you. I see our staff nodding their heads, so I take that as a good sign. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Victor Johnson, 313 West 4th. I want to thank everyone for all that time and thought they've put into this. And I also want to say I appreciate, I get the sense from all the council members and Joshua, Mayor, Matthew, everyone, definitely understand that there's owner operators that are here in town and that we provide a really valuable service to the community. And I love referring guests to Freebridge Brewing or Shannon's Ice Cream or go see my friends play music here or there. Really, and I feel it from you all, so I appreciate that. It's not like not a NIMBY kind of thing, and you all care about what people are saying. And I wouldn't disagree with anything anyone's saying from the Scenic Drive area. What I would like to add to the conversation is we've been talking about clusters, maybe one on Scenic, maybe one out by the port. I would suggest that maybe we consider a radius in the downtown area too, which I know is central business zone, but it's also, there's neighborhood areas down there. And what I'm specifically thinking about is like, we're going across the street from Oliver's Carpeting. There's about 7 or 8 nice historic homes right in there, which is really a residential neighborhood, even though it's a central business zoning. Across from like the Eggies would be like the 300 block of West 4th on the north side of the street. Same thing. Depending on how you count, there's probably 7 or 8 houses right in there. And then on maybe like the 500 block of West 3rd, so just east of St. Vincent de Paul, again, more historical homes, and it's really a residential neighborhood. So I think it might be worth considering maybe something like 100-yard thing in the central business zone just to prevent this whole idea of more clusters happening before. I mean, if there's that many short-term licenses available, 30 or 40, whatever it is, I mean, it's conceivable that someone could wrangle 4 or 5 of those properties, and especially in the downtown, if events are going to be allowed, you could have, a string of properties where it's not really, if our intent is to kind of preserve neighborhoods, especially beautiful historic neighborhoods, I think that's something we should really be thinking about and considering. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Johnson?
One, thank you, Victor. Have you measured how far you and the Aggies are apart?
No, but typically they're 50-foot wide lots, so we'd probably be 300 feet, be my guess. We're on a different block, so.
Yeah. All right.
And I don't know if I would go 300, but I think if you went like 101 feet or so, if you had, like that would maybe be like, you couldn't have more than 30%. I mean, if there's 9 houses on the block, maybe 30 of them would have short, or 3 out of 9 or 2 out of 6 or something would probably be reasonable. This is just off the top of my head, but because it is nice. I mean, it's a permitted use in the central business. You don't want to be too restrictive, but like we're already here and we can be proactive and intentional about what we want. And there's families down there. There's kids, people pushing strollers around, kids getting on the bus. I mean, they're really lovely neighborhoods, and I think we should try and preserve the feel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir. You go ahead and then Roger.
Paul Peters, live at 300 West Scenic Drive. And I was making notes and everyone pretty much touched on what I have. And one of them is the occupancy. I'm kind of confused on it. That actually means it says occupancy is 2 persons per bedroom. So, if you have 4 bedrooms, 8 people. But is that occupancy the people that are in that house? Or all their friends that show up for dinner and their celebrations and on and on. All of a sudden that occupancy could easily double. You're talking about for all occupancy or people that are registered, stay there. I don't know. And
I think it applies to the people that are registered, but Mr. Chandler, could you clear that up for us?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a great question. It is intended for sleeping purposes. And having a restriction on special events at these properties would result in, hopefully less people being there. But you do raise a good point that there is, probably some gray area in that language, but it is effectively intended for sleeping purposes.
a lot of these crowds, they wouldn't say it was a special event. Wedding reception or friends all show up. So, I mean, I don't think that's classified as special event. So therefore, that kind of gets lost. Getting larger one.
But it would be a problem because they were violating the noise ordinance or some other thing, which we now have a mechanism to put an end to. I mean, if they're not just quietly in the house.
The noise ordinance, I believe that falls into a time of day. Something like that. This is just.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's Jonathan. I can't hear the speaker at all. I think the microphone is just a bit too far away
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah, could you talk right into the microphone, please?
Hear me now?
Let's bring it a little closer to you.
Can you hear me now?
Jonathan, is that better?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, want me to go over that again or?
No, no, I don't think that's necessary.
Well, then, and actually going back to special events and this has been brought up. That should apply to everybody rather than just transient lodging people. Owners, events that are held there that aren't paid for events, I guess, rented. Like the owner have a big party there. Okay, and then all of a sudden that seems to be considered an exempt event because it's not transient event. You know what I'm saying? That's one that's come up several occasions. That's something that doesn't matter. Not an Airbnb event.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'm losing the audio again.
No, he's backing away from the microphone. Is what's happening. Please.
Just for the administrative record, so the minutes can be accurate and also so that we can meaningfully respond. It'd be really helpful if that stopped happening.
Okay, thank you. And then the only other thing that good neighbor policy. No, I'm all for that. It sounds good. But one of the biggest problems with that is these aren't really our neighbors that we're dealing with. You know, my neighbors, I mean, if there's a problem, I can easily go to them and talk to them about it. These are strangers who are here. I wouldn't want to approach them and tell them to be quiet. You give them a list of good neighbor rules and regulations, well, they're only going to be there for 24 or 48 hours and they're gone. So the concept is great, but I'm afraid that might fall a little short in a lot of it.
Well, it's better than having no policy at all. So
exactly right. The concept is.
I appreciate your comment. Yeah.
Anyway, that's about it.
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
Thank you. Roger Nichols, 1617 Oregon Street. This is more of a clarification question for my story. You mentioned not having special events in the non-residential zone. How many special events, how many people do we have that are actually doing this in the non-residential zones? Do we have a lot of these in the central business district?
I have no idea. Mr. Chandler, do you know?
There's only a handful in like the central business commercial district, but it would give that opportunity if there was I use the Victor Trevitt House, for example, which is an Airbnb. They could effectively have an event at that location.
Thank you. That's all I need. Thanks.
But it's owner occupied.
Yes, sir. In the back.
I'm Patrick Matson, 13 West 20th Street. I'm just somebody. One of the things that I think is missing is the word community, the way we use it. Barbecuing last night.
There you go. Thank
you.
you.
The way we use community, sorry. The way we use the word community and what it really means to us in the neighborhood. Last night I was barbecuing. My next door neighbors got 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, and they're playing imagination games, and it just made me chuckle. Across the street, I've got people that are revving their engines, burning out at different times. Um, is that something I really want to call cops on? No, it's not. Now, with what we've been talking about, sure, I'll send a report, but I want to bring to attention mentioning code enforcement. I've had a lot of good success with code enforcement, and I've also had not good success with code enforcement. And their defense, they're overworked, unappreciated. They take a lot of grief from people on the street when they try to enforce the code, and they're understaffed. And so using them as a resource, hey, I, I don't see that as being an alternative. The issue that this complex issue can be settled tonight, I would ask that you extend it for 6 months, because I would really like to go with what one of my neighbors has said. It would be nice if we were a little more involved, because this idea that nothing's going to change for us. We'll make more calls. Maybe that'll bring in some heat, but we're still going to have this cluster. Now, if we're going to come up with 3 years or 5 years as a limit, I'm all for that. But just to say, yeah, as long as they're in the business, they're fine to keep doing that. That's not a relief to us. It's not fair. It's not just. So commercial versus community, and that's where I tell the story about listening to my neighbor's kids. We all know each other, and we, come together for many issues, holidays. This issue is something that seems like you've all already made up your minds. As far as certain issues, as the grandfather clause, the reports that I've seen from Joshua, the requests that we've all made, it's the one issue that really affects us all. And that's really my main point, is that if you could put a limit on it, 3 years, 5 years, okay, but just in forever, no limit, that seemed fair. So I'm done with my statement. If you've got any questions.
Any questions?
I just have one comment. First of all, 2 comments, I guess. First of all, thanks for coming forward. I don't know if you're comfortable doing this. I know a lot of people are not comfortable sort of getting up and being in the spotlight, so to speak. So I don't know where you fall on that spectrum, but thanks for making that effort, both you and your neighbors. Secondly, with regard to the grandfather clause, I don't think, or I certainly don't want you to hear sort of a lack of guts from the city in doing that. It's more along the lines of, we'll open ourselves up to a big losing lawsuit if we don't take that approach, and it would be imprudent to just bash our heads against that particular brick wall. We got to be a little bit thoughtful when it comes to property rights. So that's it.
Let me just follow up on what he just said. It's not so, to clarify, it's not so much getting sued, it's losing in court. That's the problem. We would lose. And so go ahead with what you were going to say.
So, sorry. So I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know much about these issues. I've just kind of read a little bit about them. It seems like to me as a layman that it's apples and oranges. And I also feel like we're talking about interstate, and we're not talking about interstate in the situation that we have. And I've heard the term friends of the court. And my question is, well, why wouldn't we be friends of the court in Hood River? Benjamin has done the same thing. And, and it was been brought up to the attention that 7 years ago, when this was put in Hood River, that now it's come back and they're questioning it. Um, I don't know all the legal ramifications, but I certainly feel like that that there should be a path to a limit. Um,
Okay,
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your effort.
appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Kara.
so with respect to the City of Hood River litigation, yes, they were sued 7 years after they adopted that ordinance. But the nature of the case isn't necessarily connected with the fact that they were phasing out certain short-term rentals. If the city wanted to make the grandfathering of the vicinity requirements or the parking requirements applicable to currently licensed short-term rentals, there is a path to do that. It would require I would feel comfortable with a 7-year amortization, similar to what the City of Hood River did. And we can learn a lot from the lessons there in that case. But they weren't sued for the amortization, the slow trickle, allowing this to happen over a time period of 7 years. I think that that's a great opportunity to avoid a takings claim and to successfully defend a lawsuit like that if the city wanted to explore that option. It just wasn't something that we were given any direction on exploring. And so it wouldn't be so much that we would prevent these currently existing short-term rentals from operating, owner-occupied or otherwise. Well, it really is the owner-occupied issue that landed the City of Hood River in hot water. But it's so much that there is a property interest there. It's the property interest in their license. And we don't want to shift the goalposts on them too suddenly, such as adopting a new ordinance that would make them overnight, make them required overnight to suddenly have 8 parking spaces on their property that can't accommodate 8 parking spaces, for example. But over a period of 7 years, like the City of Hood River has done, there is a path forward there to making them subject to those parking requirements and vicinity requirements and things of that nature. So I just wanted to flag that for the council's consideration.
Thank you.
May I?
Councilor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Where did you go, City Attorney Kara? Popped out of existence, and there you are.
My apologies.
Thank you. A question for you with regard to, I think you called it amortization or this essentially bringing existing residential STRs into compliance with what we think is a more reasonable amount of concentration and behavior and what have you. I like the term 4 or 5 years myself, but at any rate, would that have to be bundled with this ordinance, or is that exploring that a separate issue?
It doesn't need to be bundled with this general ordinance, which simply updates the regulations. It could be brought back as a separate item, amending this title 8.02 further by adding a new provision talking about that. Although I will say that as part of the new council rules that became effective relatively recently, council's taken the position that substantive changes to proposed ordinances require a second reading if they're made at, like, for example, if coming out of this meeting, council's intent is to change some substance of this proposed ordinance, we'd have to bring it back to a second meeting anyway. And so that would probably be the best way to tackle that administratively. But no, it does not need to be tied to this particular general ordinance. We could simply adopt another one in the future as additional research goes into this. And as staff capacity dictates, to bring this back as a future general ordinance unrelated to these amendments.
When does the moratorium expire? November
26th, 24th.
26th.
Something
I
like
might have read that wrong. Yeah.
It's all right. That's late
Yeah,
November.
it's the
Okay.
26th. Yep.
I think it's fair to say there's not going to be a vote on this tonight, is that?
Yeah, because we're proposing changes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to back you up there a minute. My notes had 3 proposed changes, at least that we had discussed: 500-foot buffer instead of a 300-foot buffer, so not substantive change in that sense. Adding the definition of room to be consonant with or following the international
codes and possibly, I guess, adding possibly adding a buffer in the non-residential zones. That would be three. Would that be too much to?
But Councilor Long had a suggestion.
About the reporting?
Yeah, about, yeah.
Do you have a suggestion that would be ready to go or not really? Like ready to slot into an ordinance, or would you?
No, because I was responding to what came up here tonight. I mean, what I
Yeah.
said out loud, but I think we need more time so we don't have more unintended consequences. And I
Yeah,
did have some clarification. I want to say something else, but Claire Graper has had her hand up like
Yeah, I was going to get to
forever.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go ahead and hear what Ms. Graper has to say? Ms. Graper, please identify yourself and you go ahead and address the city council about this issue.
Hi, thank you so much. I know that I'm like Johnny come lately on this one, and I'm gonna just kind of turn my tablet. Thank you so much for allowing my comments. I apologize for not being there in person. I really appreciate the robust discussion. Set up for high density, the Dalles is not. I too would like to see this pushed out. It would be really amazing if we set an expectation of getting 1% of citizens to comment before we move forward on it, because it affects all of us. The parking situation in the Dalles, especially in these residential neighborhoods up by Cirrhosis. I live over by Colonel Wright. It's tight. And that minimum distance seems really low, given the density we already encounter here with so many families in such a kind of a tight area. I would add that the STRs being opened up in business areas for events seems like it's going to cause an awful lot of added city attention. I think there should be an additional licensing fee, and they should be inspected for fire and occupancy. I think we should also, be prepared to put somebody going by there on a patrol every once in a while to keep an eye on things, because a lot of these houses, again, are not set up for events. It seems like we could do something as far as waiting the lottery for local owners. Is there maybe an option to require local management for some of these STRs? I mean, I know my neighbors, and I ask them to turn it down. They generally do. Thank you, Ms. Long. We do need to streamline that complaint process, definitely, for folks. It sounds like there's a lot of pent up anger there. So I guess that's really all I had to say, but I will be paying a lot more attention to this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Graper? No. Thank you very much.
May I? So I just want to clarify. I mean, I've been trying to solve the problem that I thought was having better behavior from the owner operators and the people at those houses. But as I listen to some people speak, I feel like as I propose things that would help with that, what I'm still getting back is pretty much we don't want short-term rentals at all in the Dalles. And so I don't know if we're up here as a council talking about the wrong thing. And also it's frustrating to me for people to say we need to talk about it more. People haven't given input. We've been working on this for a year. Some of you have given a lot of input, and we've really tried to take that to heart. So it's not just this issue. I hear it all the time. And with the forum coming up, I'm not running for office, but a lot of the questions that were submitted, like hinged around the assumption that city council is doing things behind closed doors and we're sneaking around doing things that aren't good for the city. And it's not true. This council is one of the most transparent in a long time. And we open it up to people, and we put it on the radio, and we put it on the internet, and we put it in the papers, and people don't participate until the last minute. And then they're still frustrated with us. And what problem do you want us to solve? Do you not want short-term rentals at all? Or what we're proposing to make it better so that they're good neighbors and you hardly know they're there? Can you live with that? I'm not sure.
Um, yeah, I think, unless we get down the road toward a, 7-year amortization, I mean, just doing away with the, short-term rentals is, as far as I know and am concerned, is not going to happen, without extreme legal consequences for the city of the Dalles. So we're really talking about is some sort of amortization. 7 years has been suggested, or doing what we can to make the neighborhood more livable, which I think we're all sympathetic toward. But I think grandfathering in is just not something I think is going to be legally feasible for us.
Mr. Mayor, can I just chime in on that very last point? I promise it'll be super brief. I know it's been a long meeting so far. Um, the city has the authority to ban all short-term rentals, just as Council Long suggested. It would probably take the form of a 7-year activation, just to ensure that existing licenses and licensees aren't deprived of any property interests. And 7 years seems to be a comfortable buffer for that. Could be closer to 5. I'd have to do some additional research. But if the city of the Dalles, through its city council, decides that they don't want any short-term rentals here, that's absolutely something that we can do. It would just take some time to get there. I just wanted to put that in front of the council so that you have a full and accurate understanding of what the laws look like.
Well, it seems to me the more immediate issue here is the moratorium. The moratorium expires at around the same time our next city council meeting is. I don't know that we need 6 months, but it seems to me we need to extend that. You got any suggestions as far as that?
I mean, we have 2 council meetings between really now and then, October 28th, and then November, the tail end of November, November 25th. So it would be very close to that expiration.
I guess
That's
I
of
don't.
interest to the council. That
I
would
guess
be
I
great direction to have this
don't
evening.
see the benefit of extending a moratorium over moving forward an ordinance that addresses a lot of the concerns, and especially if we do it prior to the first of the year and try and get these new rules active as soon as possible. Look, it's a big apple, and I don't want us to get all hung up on the fact that we might not be able to swallow it in one gulp. But we can take a lot of bites out of it with this particular ordinance, and then if we need to, keep chewing on it.
I would also add that if the concern may be that another short-term rental begins operating up in the Scenic Drive residential area, if we adopted an ordinance with 300, 500, whatever ultimately is the decision, vicinity component, that would take a big step, as you're saying, towards addressing some of those concerns. That would be one reason to extend the moratorium, is to prevent that from happening. But if an ordinance is in place, it helps.
Mr. Mayor, could I have Ms. Carpenter's response? It looked like she was about to respond to my question, and is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
And I'm Sally Carpenter. I did want to respond to Ms. Long's question about residents' position, whether there should be restrictions on short-term rentals or just right prohibition on them. I raised in my last letter to the council dated October 10th that at least in my zone, a low density residential zone, short-term rentals, as far as I can tell, are not explicitly allowed to exist in this zone. As far as my reading of the municipal code goes, it's just not an explicitly listed permitted use. And I'm guessing that the city has allowed this for a number of years by looking at this language, kind of thinking it's a bed and breakfast or vacation rental. And what I'm hearing tonight is that's outdated language that needs to go. Yeah, I can't find that defined anywhere in the city code. Perhaps I'm overlooking it. Please tell me. As far as I can read, at least in my low density residential zone, these are not explicitly allowed. So with that, I'm proposing they not be in low density residential zones. But understanding that some exist, yes, I agree that restrictions do need to be in place as well.
Thank you.
Restrictions need the what?
There do need to be more restrictions,
Oh.
and I appreciate Mr. Chandler's hard work on the current proposed ordinance. I feel it's not enough. It's not going forward. It's not some enough, but it is something, as was pointed out by Mr. Richardson, that my reading of the current municipal code is that short-term rentals aren't even explicitly allowed.
So I can provide some clarification on that. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, if you look in I think the low, medium, and high zones, we have permitted uses, conditional uses, and then there's accessory uses. And listed under accessory uses are bed and breakfast and vacation rentals. That line there needs to be struck out of the code because bed and breakfast and vacation rentals went away in 2020 with the adoption of the short-term rental ordinance. So we're talking Title 10, which is land use, and that is what's being referenced here with permitted uses. And then when you talk Title 8 is business. Title 8 is where we have short-term rentals, transient merchant licenses, food carts. These are things that can be added. Basically, they are licenses rather than uses. So there's a distinction there, and we were very thoughtful in 2020 when we did away with the bed and breakfast vacation rental. We pulled it out of land use, and we did away with it as a land use, and we have it now as a business license type of program. And that was from the direction that we've seen around the state is kind of where a lot of municipalities are moving, where they're taking it out of land use codes.
And in 2020, we were trying to be proactive because we saw short-term rentals happening all over the state with some very bad things happening. And we invited all of the bed and breakfast and current people who are currently doing short-term rentals or whatever kind of rentals out of their property to give testimony. And we did listen to all that. And then I do think we all acknowledge that even though we tried to do our best, there were unintended consequences with what happened to you guys. And so we're trying to rectify that with that. I thought we were trying to do it without totally getting rid of short-term rentals. But if that's not the consensus of the community anymore, then I would want to know that because that would change.
Well, the
how
community
I'm-
is 17,000 people, and we're not going
Yeah.
to, we need to make
No.
rules for the whole community.
Yeah.
Taking this as an object lesson and why we need to move quickly and be thoughtful about it. But I guess I don't think we ought to open that particular can about just banning all short-term rentals. I feel like we can take some substantial steps, and those steps may lead us to being, I was going to say they may lead us to yanking the license of some bad actors, and I'd be okay with that.
I would be absolutely okay being aggressive about doing that. But when I proposed those things and people still came up and testified about their concerns. And so I felt like maybe I didn't hit the nail on the head with what I was proposing.
I feel like there's a certain amount of venting of pent-up frustrations here, and that's legitimate. But again, we need to take a deep breath and have a little bit of perspective, in my opinion, and remember that we are trying to solve very real issues or problems in this neighborhood, but we're also making law for the whole community, and that would definitely argue against just outright ban. I think the unintended consequences would be significant.
We obviously have some enforcement issues because Yvonne Pepin Wakefield is saying that the HOA knows about all those down there. We didn't know about them, and that's obviously not allowed because they're too close together anyway, even with current restrictions.
Well, I hope this discussion has at least convinced most, if not all of you, that our minds aren't made up. So, did you want to say something, Mr. Runyon?
Maybe.
We have to
break time coming up pretty quick.
Our 3-hour limit.
I don't think we're going to solve it tonight. I don't think we're going to be voting on it. I want to reiterate what I mentioned earlier about a 6-month and a 1-year review of whatever we do end up coming with. I think we have a number of changes. 500 feet was one of those. Victor Johnson brought up something really important, I thought, because much of this whole conversation deals on a neighborhood with a cluster of homes owned by a party that's doing these STRs and doesn't live there. We can't do much about what happened then and the person that bought that. All we can do is try to enforce some rules and put them in there for the future. But what Victor brought up, as he pointed out, some homes in the downtown area and different places that might fit the bill. We need to do a good public relations job of getting the word out to our real estate companies in the area that when they have somebody coming in looking to buy multiple homes, to make sure it's a real estate agent's duty to let them know the rules of what we have regarding how you use those homes, because we could have another neighborhood with 4 or 5 homes altogether being used for a purpose that we really didn't intend. So we need to do some public relations. Once we get this done, get that word out to all the local real estate offices in the area or in the mid-Columbia area about this is what's going on and this is what you can't do. So help your customers, go the right direction. So I appreciate everybody's comments tonight. One thing I've always really tried to do, and this council has been very good at, is no matter where we sit personally, we really try to examine all sides of things before we make a decision. I've been very happy with that. There's very few of us that have agreement on everything on this panel, but when it comes to the city, I've always said, there's no politics in a pothole, and we're right here and we're listening. It's sometimes hard to go one way and not solve the entire problem, but that's part of being in city government or county government or state government. You can't always please everybody, but we try to do the best job that we possibly can. And we spend a lot of time, as you can see, this paper spread all over here. It was this way at my house earlier. My wife is always glad when I bring it here. And we all spend a lot of time, not just in these meetings, but thank you all for talking with us. I don't know where we're going to go from here, Mr. Mayor. That's up to you, but I think we have some consensus on some things to move forward to give Josh Chandler and the planning department some direction. And maybe we can get this solved in another month. I don't know.
Well,
How long, I was going to ask Mr. Mayor, how long staff might want if you were to send them back and, ask if they had sufficient direction, how long they might want, and then suggest maybe extending the moratorium.
and if it's past our meeting in November, we would have to extend the moratorium.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. I'm going to hand.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You don't have to extend the moratorium unless you choose to. There's no requirement to do so.
But they could come in under the
Right.
rules, which we're trying to avoid.
Correct.
We don't want any more grandfathered. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. But if you pass an ordinance with
By the way, Darcy, thank you, because we haven't just been dealing with this for a year. We were dealing with it 4 years ago.
True, very true.
In a whole different look, but we've been dealing with this STR situation a long time.
Well, in light of the fact that I was prepared to ask for a consensus on extending the moratorium. Our city manager doesn't think that's absolutely necessary.
I just mentioned that you don't have to extend more, just that clarification.
Okay.
Sorry.
In light of that, you've come up with some what I think are very good suggestions here dealing with where we go from here in 3 different phases. So I'm going to hand this back over to you and you can go through it.
So just
Mr. Mayor,
listening.
I'm sorry to just jump in, but it looks like Councilor Randall has had his hand raised. I just wanted to flag that before we get too far into it.
Go ahead, Councilor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. I just real quickly wanted to say, I think what we had before us is pretty good as far as addressing these concerns. The big weakness is that, as we mentioned before, the cluster houses that have the exemption clause. And I think if we address that, along with the other changes we discussed and get that exemption clause removed over, phase it out over a 5 or 7 year period, I think this goes a long ways to addressing, I think, all of the concerns we've been hearing from the citizens. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, that's if the council goes along with that particular phase out, the 5 or 7 years. That's, to me, pretty dramatic. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying it's a dramatic change. So go ahead, Mr. Klebs.
So in listening to this evening's conversation, I'm just trying to coalesce it to get some consensus from the council so staff can proceed accordingly. Just scribbling here on my paper, I kind of see a three-phased approach. The first is some consensus from council around changes to the proposed ordinance, and those would include a 500-foot buffer instead of 300, a 500-foot notification instead of 300, consideration of some kind of buffer in non-residential STRs, adding a room definition or clarifying a room definition, and making changes or streamlining the potential reporting procedure for concerns or violations. If that's the consensus from council, staff can go back and work on those revisions to the proposed ordinance you have in your packet. That's something, and Josh waved me off if that's something that we could potentially bring back to council before the moratorium expires or close to it, probably at that second meeting in November, just to give us sufficient time. The second phase there, after that ordinance is potentially passed by council, is to continue looking into some kind of amortization period of time for the existing STRs, such as 7 years, which has been mentioned several times. Jonathan Cara mentioned that there would need to be some more diligence into that process and what it would look like, and could be looked at as part of that phase 2 effort. And then ultimately, the phase 3 effort would be to come back and revisit this with an update and report on how things are going on both of these initial 2 phases, 12 months or so from now, or from when the ordinance passes. So I just put that out there as a proposed kind of approach to kind of coalesce this so we can move forward. But Jonathan and Josh, if I misinterpreted something or something's not clear to you, please speak up so we can move forward with council's direction.
No, I think that works. Yeah, I think we can target the November 25th meeting.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent job of summarizing. I agree with what you just said and where we're headed. I would just ask the council to consider extending the 500 feet to somewhere between 500 and 1,000 feet. I just question whether 500 is enough, especially looking at this map that was supplied to us by the Community Development Department. That's the only thing that I would throw out there.
And so that's the exact kind of consensus we'd be looking from council on those points.
Councilor McLaughlin, did you have anything?
Oh, yes. Well, I'm sorry I'm not there to participate more, but as many of you know, I've been, because I live in that area and I'm friends with many of the neighbors, my efforts were to calm the waters and lower the emotions, basically open lines of communication, and see if we can find some common ground, some ways to live together. I think that Darcy, Councillor Long, really hit the nail on the head, and her assessment in stating that banning all is an option, but probably not a legal and a course that we really want to go down. Finding consensus, and that's what we've been trying to do. And the reason we got into this was because originally it was not a high, there were mom and pop basement, it wasn't really an issue. So we didn't put the extreme restrictions on the development. And now we're here having to come back and correct that. So as I look at changes with the 500-foot buffer, I agree with 500-foot notification. It seems reasonable. Defining what a room is, that seems positive, and communicating that, and then streamlining the reporting so that when we do, or if we do, let's put it that way, because from where we were a year or 2 years ago to where we are now, we have seen marked improvement. I think everyone would agree. Now, is it where we want to be? Probably not. However, I think this is a good step in the right direction. And I think from what you've outlined, Matthew, I agree with all of your assessment. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go any further, we should pass a motion to extend the 3-hour time limit on this council meetings. I would suggest 15 more minutes.
Mr. Mayor, Jonathan, go ahead, Jonathan.
No, I
Almost
just
beat
wanted
me
to flag
to
that. I didn't know if you checked your phone, Matthew. So yeah, Mr. Mayor, pursuant to the new council rules that council recently updated, there is no longer a motion required.
Oh,
The council now is just intends on striving to stay within that 3 hour limit. But yeah,
It's driven.
no longer required.
let the minutes show that we have been striving for the last 3 hours.
Fair enough.
When we are concluded with this conversation, I'm going to move that we take 10-minute break and come back and finish our business.
Okay. Any other comments about Mr. Klebs's three-phase approach and direction from here?
Good. I like it.
Nailed it.
Good.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
I agree.
Okay. Great job. We don't need a motion on that, do we?
Nope, consensus direction.
Right. Okay, the consensus of the council is to proceed as Mr. Klebs has outlined. We thank you all for coming. If you'd like to stick around for our budget amendment and our couple other items on the agenda, feel free to do that. But in the meantime, I'm going to request a 10-minute break, and we will reconvene here at 20 minutes until 9. Thank you.
Anyway.
Or 11. Let's see.
Where'd everybody go?
This is 11B now. Consider a resolution authorizing some budget transfers. Ms. Wilson.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. You have before you my agenda staff report for resolution number 24-22, authorizing transfers of budgeted amounts between categories of various funds of the City of the Dalles adopted budget, making appropriations and authorizing expenditures for the fiscal year ending of June 30th of 2025. The proposed resolution is one of the items is for additional funds are needed for the recently passed but not yet implemented recruitment and retention adjustment for the remainder of the fiscal year of June 30th, 2025. The recruitment and retention adjustment is intended to help the city continue to recruit and retain a trained and dedicated workforce. The following resolution will allow each employee to receive an additional $127.42 on each check through June 30th, 2025, totaling an amount of $1,146.79. The transfer is necessary to ensure that the following departments can adequately fund the personnel services and maintain operations effectively. Some departments and funds will not need the adjustment as they have enough savings to cover the additional expense in their budget currently. Resolution 2422 would authorize a transfer of $72,713 from the contingency line item of the general fund to cover additional personnel services needed for the following departments: the city clerk, city manager, legal department, judicial department, finance department, utility department, economic development department, human resource department, community development department, the police department, IT, general services, and the animal control department. Additional funds are also needed in the wastewater with a $18,693 moving from the contingency line item over to cover additional personnel services for the same request as earlier. Additional funds are needed for the 24-25 budget, and we are proposing to purchase 5 automated external defibrillators to enhance the safety and emergency preparedness of our facilities. The need is driven by health and safety compliance. And that would be a $10,720 move from the contingency line item over to the human resource safety budget line item. And then additional funds are also needed to cover the elevator inspections for the police department and the general services department. Regular safety inspections are essential to ensure compliance with the safety regulations and to prevent potential hazards. And this was something that was identified by our maintenance supervisor. And so resolution 2422 would be moving $8,568 out of the general fund contingency line item for that also. That would be giving a total of $92,001 moving from the contingency line item to other departments within the general fund budget, and $18,693 from the contingency of the wastewater fund over to the wastewater department. Is there any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Wilson? Not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 24-022, authorizing transfers of budgeted amounts between categories of various funds of the City of the Dalles budget, making appropriations and authorizing expenditures for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. Is
there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Councilor Randall and seconded by Councilor Long to adopt the resolution. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 11C, consideration of an ordinance granting a telecommunications franchise. Mr. Kara.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mays. Franchises, as council knows, plays a critical role in the city's regulation of our public rights of way, and they promote the public interest needs for critical infrastructure, and they benefit our constituents by connecting them to services offered for competitive rates. We currently have franchise agreements for providers with providers that offer cable services, electric utility, natural gas services, solid waste disposal, and telecom. Earlier this year in May, the city manager informed council of their intent to coordinate with me to explore a more robust franchise program to benefit the city, connected with council's goal of fiscal sustainability. And so in April of this year, we noticed a current franchise holder, Zayo Group LLC, who I'll just call Zayo for the rest of this meeting, of the city's intent to renegotiate the terms of a franchise that was previously granted in 2017. And this new franchise is attached to the special ordinance. It starts on, looks like it starts on page 68, and it represents a significant effort by both the city manager and myself at trying to make our city's franchise program much more robust, and basically overhauled some very old and dated agreements with very unfavorable terms to the city relatively, as well as implementing some of the changes to the world of franchise law that have taken place over the past few years. And so some of the highlights of this new proposed agreement are listed at the top of page 65 in your staff report. I'll just run through them very briefly. It's a 15-year term agreement, but it retains the option for either the city or Zayo to open the agreement every 5 years to renegotiate in good faith. And it requires Zayo to notice the city of any transfer of its corporation to ensure that the city continues to receive its owed franchise fees from potential new owners of that business. This is consistent with some of our operational hiccups that we've noticed with other carriers, not noticing the city of when they're sold to a competing business. We wanted to implement some very clear processes for addressing, and I don't use this word often, virtually all issues related to this franchise or the city's regulation of its right of way. Again, we took a very comprehensive look at our franchises generally, and I think both the city manager and I are very proud of the work that went into this, and we hope to use this as a template going forward for all of the city's telecommunications needs. This template also includes a 24/7 contact number to address any issues that the city can contact Zayo's utility response team for anything that might require emergent attention. And finally, a new franchise fee structure, which guarantees the city receives at least $2,000 a year, broken down as $500 per quarter as a minimum annual franchise fee. And that sort of leads me to the budget implications part of this staff report. Under its existing franchise, Zayo is only required to pay 7% of its gross revenue from the money it receives and generates from within the city's corporate limits. Under this new proposed agreement before you here tonight, even if they don't serve any customers or generate any revenue from within the city's corporate limits, The city is guaranteed to receive at least $2,000 per year as a franchise administration fee effectively. But I think it's just very much a win-win for the city. And so I'm happy to answer any specific questions about any specific provisions of the agreement. But the agreement requires the council approve it by special ordinance. And so the staff's recommendation is moving to adopt special ordinance number 24-604 as presented by title only. As a gesture of good faith, Zayo has provided me its fully executed acknowledgement and acceptance of the terms of this franchise. They gave that to us last week ahead of this meeting. And I mentioned that I would share that with this council to just to sort of show that they're very willing and very accepting of the terms of this agreement. And so I mentioned that I would mention that. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Kara?
As a word correction, I would note, maybe it's already been fixed. And under budget implications, the sentence in that paragraph, a very long sentence, it says, if Zayo does not serve any customers with the city limits, that's probably within the city limits. It might make a difference.
You're probably exactly right, Councilor Runyon. My apologies.
I meant to call Amy earlier in the day and I just forgot.
That's right.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the ordinance?
I'll move to adopt special ordinance number 24-604 as presented by title only.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Councilor Richardson and seconded by Councilor Runyon to adopt the special ordinance. Is there anyone who would like to have this read in its entirety?
No.
No.
Voice of God says no.
Is that laughter an indication that you would not?
I would not like to have this read in its entirety. No, thank you.
I've already read it once.
Please read the ordinance by title, please.
Special ordinance number 24-604, a special ordinance granting a non-exclusive telecommunications franchise to Zayo Group LLC.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
I would say that I read the entire thing and then called the mayor and attempted to get a hold of Matthews. What the hell is this? Because I thought maybe it was Spectrum or Charter or something. It doesn't really tell you anywhere in it what it is or what it does. So
We're also working on that as well. Zayo is just another, not just another, but is another ISP, internet service provider.
Okay.
Okay, item 11D, consideration of an ordinance that establishes the official compensation package policy for the city's elected officials. My participation in this discussion would be inappropriate because I have an active conflict of interest. The reason I have an active conflict of interest is because I stand to financially benefit from the resolution if it is passed. And as a result, I will be abstaining from this vote, and I will not be participating in this discussion.
Mr. Mayor, do you mean that you have an actual conflict of interest?
Yes, I meant actual conflict of interest, not an active conflict of interest. I have
see.
an actual conflict of interest. And with that, I am out of here.
All right. And
Please come and get me when the discussion's over. I'll be sitting silently.
Mayor Mays, before you leave, I will declare an actual conflict of interest on this proposed resolution and compensation policy because of my participation in official action would affect my financial interests. I will refrain from participating by declaring my absence and from the vote, abstention from the vote, and I will leave Zoom now.
This is Councilor Randall. I also want to declare an actual conflict of interest on this proposed resolution and compensation policy because my participation will also my participation in the official action would also affect my financial interests. So I will refrain from participation by declaring abstention from the vote, and I will leave the Zoom meeting.
Well, I feel I should declare a potential conflict of interest on the proposed resolution and policy because my participation in the official action could potentially affect my financial interests if I were to be reelected to council after the upcoming election.
My turn. I also declare a potential conflict of interest on the proposed resolution and compensation policy because my participation in the official action could affect my financial interests if I were to be reelected to council after the upcoming general election.
Okay, Darcy Long, I have no conflict of interest, and thus I would nominate myself to be the presiding officer of the rest of this meeting.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, here we go. All right, so this is action item 11D. Matthew, you are going to present this.
Thank you, Presiding Officer Long. Included in your packet today is a short staff report regarding Resolution 24-023, a resolution establishing the city's official compensation package policy for elected officials. The 2020 City of the Dalles Charter authorizes council to prescribe compensation for city personnel, the mayor, and councilors. With respect to such compensation, the mayor currently receives $200 per month and councilors receive $100 per month. And those amounts have not changed since fiscal year 21-22. The city's elected positions come with time commitments and costs due to frequent meetings, constituent engagement, extremely long night meetings on Mondays. And these are expenses that these officials will not otherwise incur but for their positions. We've had substantial feedback through our local government academy, detailing some of the barriers that public service may present itself, and action by the public at large to amend the city charter, demonstrating support for an approach to provide elected officials a modest compensation package to reduce some of these costs and reduce some of these barriers to participate in your own local government. At the April 22nd, 2024 meeting, council authorized an increase from $200 to $500 per month for the mayor and $100 to $400 per month for councilors. This was later clarified in a motion in May 2024 to confirm that these increases would become effective only for successors in office to those positions on the first day of their respective successor's term. Since that clarified motion passed, the city actually organized with the Oregon Government Ethics Commission a training, and really for the whole region, which had excellent attendance. And through that training, staff determined a stronger way to establish compensation for city elected officials by adopting a resolution establishing the city's, quote, official compensation package policy for elected officials. So the policy proposed for adoption through this resolution ensures transparency, details the procedures under which compensation is provided, and is consistent with Oregon government ethics law. If adopted, the policy becomes effective January 1st, 2025. The budget was prepared earlier this year with these increases under consideration, and so there are no additional budget implications or other action needed. And with staff's recommendation is to move to adopt Resolution 24-023 as presented, following the process we just went through to make sure everything was tight and lockstep with actual and potential conflicts of interest. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Roger Nichols, would you? Yes. I thought you might want some clarification.
Would like some clarification from Attorney Kara, if I could, please. If these two have declared a conflict of interest, how can they vote on it?
Councillor Long, may I?
Yes.
On Mr. Nichols.
Mhm.
Can I see, can the camera be moved so that I can see Mr. Nichols as well?
I apologize for that.
No, it's not on you, Roger. Hi. So you're absolutely right. Two councillors sitting on the dais in front of you have declared potential conflicts of interest. Under Oregon government ethics law, potential conflicts of interest are not grounds to have those councillors abstain from the vote. The appropriate course of action for any public official met with a potential course of action is to publicly disclose the nature of that conflict. For those counselors and the mayor who are presented with actual conflicts of interest, the appropriate course of action is for them to abstain from the vote, in addition to disclosing the nature of the conflict. The appropriate course of action for them under ethics laws is to abstain from the vote and remove themselves from the dais. We've taken that a step further here tonight. We've removed them from the room. They've left the Zoom meeting as well, just to avoid any appearances of their influence. And so and I'm happy to touch base with you offline, or we can continue this conversation here publicly. I'm happy to do that as well. With respect to how and why a potential conflict of interest differs from an actual conflict of interest. But the rules are quite clear that there is no requirement that a public official met with a potential conflict of interest abstain from the vote. The only requirement imposed on them by state law is to disclose the nature of the conflict at every instance. And so, yeah.
Okay, my understanding then would be that the difference between the potential and the actual is that these people are up for election and may not be here. So it's only a potential, where the other people are already going to be here and thus to have an actual.
That's exactly right, with the exception of Councillor Long, who's publicly publicly noticed her intent not to run for re-election, and she will not be sitting on council next year. Councillor Runyon and Councillor Richardson may or may not be sitting on council next year. And so you're absolutely right. That is the only distinction. But that is the only distinction worth having under the eyes of the Oregon government ethics laws. The only difference between an actual and a potential conflict of interest is the difference between the word would and could. And so an actual conflict of interest would result in a financial gain, and a potential conflict of interest could result in a financial gain.
Thank you. That's very clarifying.
Yeah, you bet.
There's a massive write-in campaign to get me out of here, I know.
There will be now.
It's so complicated. They actually are trying to get a fix for this at the state level when they realized what was going on. So, all right. So any questions from, if not, I'll take a motion.
I would just have one comment for anyone in the audience that we in fact voted on this in April, or made action to do this in April. I've heard not a peep from anyone.
Yeah, I haven't either.
So I could go through the arguments that this is modest amount of money, it's well earned, it does not substantially affect the city budget, etc. This is a technical fix to be as transparent and proper as possible.
It's true. And there are a lot of expenses that people don't realize with the number of meetings we have. And we would like diversity, and things like childcare are sometimes a burden for people. So there's many things that the funds could be used for, but it's all just a stipend. It's not a salary. So.
It's compensation is what it is. And so
Yes.
that's why it's part of the official compensation policy package. That's right.
Mm-hmm. So, Jonathan, just to clarify, they've declared their potential conflicts. Can they make the motion, or do I need to do that?
Any sitting councillor on the dais can make the motion. I think a best practice would be before the vote is called, and if the city clerk could take a roll call vote for this. We want to make sure the minutes reflect all of these declarations of conflicts, as well as a roll call vote, and possibly even a disclosure of the conflict one more time before the vote is cast. That would be appropriate, I think.
Okay. You want to make a motion, or you want me to make the motion? Okay, I'm going to move to adopt resolution number 24-023 as presented.
I'll second it. Is that okay?
You have to, there's only 3 of us. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wait, sorry. Did anyone, oh, yes. Would anyone like to declare a conflict of interest? Please do so during the roll call.
Go ahead.
Counselor Runyon,
Okay. I'm declaring a potential conflict of interest. And am I on the right paragraph here? I think I'm too far down the list here. Potential conflict of interest on the proposed resolution and compensation policy, because you're my participation in the official action could affect my financial interests if I were to be reelected to council after the upcoming general election.
And your vote?
Is in favor. Whoever holds the spot.
Counselor Richardson.
Yes, hello. I would like to repeat my declaration of a potential conflict of interest should I be reelected to this position, and I vote aye.
Counselor Long.
I have no conflict of interest and I vote aye.
Let the record show the counselors that voted aye are listed as that, and let the record show that the counselors who are abstained from the vote, please, Amy, that it's reflected in the final sign execution. And Counselor Long, before you leave tonight, can I please ask you, as the presiding officer, to sign on to this resolution instead of the mayor?
Yes, I will.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Okay. And we're just waiting for Amy to bring the mayor back in because he requested that. And this is the last item on our agenda. Okay. I will now adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for presiding, Counselor Long.
Mhm.
Any other business to come before the city council? Okay, with that, we adjourn.
Thank you.